Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The passage of time will now bring you to something strange, unique, and idiosyncratic. Have a good time.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. I am your host, Jenn the Rage Adams, and we've been on the road for so long. 5 months ago, we hopped into a gray Mercedes and plowed through the first 2 books of the Hodges trilogy. If you've not already checked out our episodes on Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers, please go back and listen. Meep, meep. We had fun, and I think we found something to love in both books. Vroom, vroom, vroom. I feel like we need some more car sounds in my intro. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Meep, meep. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Meep, meep, meep. And at long last, we've come to the end of the road, or the end of watch, which is the book we're covering today. But I'm not alone. I'm joined by my fearless Hodges homies to help me dissect the final chapter of the trilogy. Joining us from Chicago, he's rocking and rolling back from the library. Randall, say hello. What edition did you read, and was this your first trip to the end of watch?
Hey, rockin' Randall, zap it, suicide, Colburn.
Just get them all in there.
Yeah, no, I wrote down zap it, suicide, which I was listening to the audiobook and hearing Will Patton say it really earnestly was very funny to me. I like Hodges homies too. That's good.
I mean, it's the 4 of us official, you know?
Yeah. So I didn't read an interesting edition because I just read this on my Kindle. So nothing fancy there. And then this was not my first trip, although I feel kind of embarrassed because I feel like on previous episodes, especially on the TV episodes about the series, we were talking about how Lou, who is Freddie in the book, Lou Linklater, and Freddie Linklater in the book, we were like, oh, I don't think she pops up in the 3rd book. And then she actually has like a pretty important role. And that just shows, I think, how little I remembered from my first read of End of Watch, which I did like right when it came out. So yeah, I think I'm excited to talk about this book because I do feel like I definitely absorbed more of it. But yeah, I think that maybe speaks to some stuff that I want to talk about.
Well, just getting back from Chicago, she's tuning up Holly's brand new electric speedster. Rachel, say hello. What edition did you read? And I know it's not your first time through End of Watch. It's not even your first time talking to me about End of Watch.
Yes, this is Rachel. Thank God this is the end. Reeves. And I am reading, apparently, the first Pocket Books paperback edition, April 2017 version, but also listen to the audiobook as well, because I really do find that Will Patton helps propel me through these stories a lot in his different personifications of the characters. So I probably recommend that more than any other way to ingest this book. And yeah, not my first time reaching End of Watch. However, I'm actually excited to talk about this because this is my 3rd time. My 3rd time making my way through this 3rd book of the Hodges trilogy. And I kind of found my opinions changing a little bit, which I did not expect. So very excited to talk about it and hear what you guys thought about it as well.
Yeah, I might be with you on that. Joining us a little south of Chicago and also from room 217 in the hospital. Ashley, say hello. What edition did you read? And was this your first trip through End of Watch?
This is Ashley by the sea, by the sea.
Don't you dare.
Cassidy.
Did we all listen to the audiobook?
Yep.
Yes.
I, too, listened to Will Patton read me this story. And boy, what a joy. I just need to find more books that I don't know if he's done anything other than this trilogy, but he's fantastic.
Yeah, the first time I listened to him read it, because this was my probably third or fourth time, I think, listening to this book, I wasn't crazy about the way he did Holly's voice, but I think I kind of have gotten over it now, and I do really enjoy his narration, and I am a stickler for a good narrator, and I do think he pulls it off. This was
let me jump in and just say Will Patton has actually narrated a lot of King, more than I realized. Not just these books, but also If It Bleeds, Dr. Sleep, The Outsider,
right.
Skeleton Crew, and You Like It Darker.
Ooh,
And
awesome.
he also has done a couple nonfictions that are very popular. Eric Larson's The Demon of Unrest, which just came out, and then Killers of the Flower Moon.
Ooh,
Oh, wow.
interesting.
Oh, wow.
And many others. I just pulled up the list, and yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on here.
And I also remember him as the shorter scientist in Armageddon, too, who's Bruce Willis's
most
right-hand
notably.
man. Yes,
Most
most notably,
notably,
yeah. This was, I can't remember how many times I've read this book, but it's been at least 3 times. And I went to the book tour for this. So, I went to the Ryman Auditorium and I saw Stephen King walk out and start talking. He didn't really talk much about this book. He was just kind of talking
Interesting.
about shit. And the people that asked him a bunch of questions, shamed the city of Nashville.
Oh, it's always, any city, there's no
Yeah,
such thing as a
doesn't
good
matter where you
audience
are.
question.
I know. I was like, okay, so you just want him to know that you're a writer and
Yeah,
maybe get
that's
you an
pretty much how it
agent.
usually
Yeah.
goes.
And one lady got up there and she said, and my favorite book is Eye of the Dragon. And then she waited for him to congratulate her for liking that book too. And I was like, how dare you? But I also cried a little bit when he walked out on stage. So that's where I got my copy of the book, and it's a first edition hardcover. But I also listened to Will Patton read it, and I do enjoy his audiobook. And I agree. I feel like it propels you through, and that sometimes when I'm having trouble getting through a book or getting into it, I find the audiobook really, really helps. I'm surprised I got through the Dark Tower series without audiobooks. Well, since, spoiler, Holly has sold the murderous Mercedes, let's jump into I think it's a snowmobile, or it's some kind of car going
Snowcat.
through the snow. Snowcat, that's what it is. That they end up in the last section, not at all unlike The Shining, and head on down to the Derry Public Library.
Mike Hanlon, if you see...
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Tell Mike Hanlon that I had to go, that I had to get cleaned up. Tell him. Tell him. Tell him I'll see him tonight.
Get out! Last chance, Tosha. Get out! Get out!
All right. So, End of Watch was first announced on April 21st, 2015 at an event for St. Francis College, and it was originally titled The Suicide Prince. But on June 10th, 2015, King announced that the new title would be End of Watch. So let's talk about that original title. What do we think of the change? Would we prefer The Suicide Prince? And why do you think he changed it? Randall, what do you think?
I love that title. I can imagine he maybe changed it for the same reason he changed the title of Dreamcatcher, which was initially Cancer, because Tabby said nobody wants to read a book called that. But I am one of the freaks who would. So
I would too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like constant readers would not be dismayed, but normies may have been put off. And
Yeah.
I was even struggling. I was trying to think of books with the word suicide in the title. The only one I could come up with was Virgin Suicide.
Yeah.
So I Googled it, and there's 2 French novellas and a Buffy the Vampire Slayer book.
Oh.
One of the top the TV show tie-ins. Those are the only things with suicide in the title. And I think, it's a trigger word for sure.
I can see
And-
publishers saying,
Yeah, well, and
we're
also,
going to nix that one.
Yeah.
We as a society do not like to think about suicide. even just saying the word, it's like, so it's going to give someone the idea. So you're inviting a lot of negative reactions, which like some people feel like any press is good press, but whether or not you feel like dealing with the onslaught of talk shows, you'll have to go on explaining yourself potentially for that could definitely cause a change. I do like the title though. I think maybe End of Watch encompasses the book more because Mr. Mercedes, the first one, was about Brady, the inciting incident. Finders Keepers was the team kind of coming into their own. And End of Watch was, you know, beating the final boss, which was Electro Brady.
And it's also more about Hodges. Like, than
it's
Brady,
also more about
Suicide
Hodges.
Prince would be all about Brady. And
exactly.
I can see King maybe saying, I want this to sort of be Hodges' swan song. And that's what's on his tombstone at the end, is End of Watch. So
Yeah. Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. That's why he changed it. He wanted to center Hodges at the end of this trilogy versus then, you know, putting the spotlight even more on Brady. But yeah, I am glad he changed the title. I think I am the lone holdout here. I think just like, the Suicide Prince, I'm not sure it like encompasses everything that I think that he's getting at here. And although I will say, because there's a lot of suicide talk in this book.
Yeah,
so
there
maybe
is.
it would have been helpful for some people to just be like, no, thank you, rather than get into it and then all of a sudden realize, okay, we're going down this a lot and it's not just for a second. We're going to keep talking about suicide over and over and over again. So I can imagine that there would be some people that would get in this book and then just maybe want to put it back on the shelf unfinished.
Yeah, it's like the title itself is the trigger warning, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to put a pin in all that because I think like when we start talking about the book itself deeper, that is definitely, it's not just the suicide aspect, but just the kind of like preponderance with death and hospitals and and injury and self-harm. It's like a really, really like, and this isn't a ding on the book. It's just like, it's very unpleasant. You know?
Yeah.
Lots of anxieties here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do want to talk more about that once we start getting into the hook. Have y'all seen The Suicide Kings?
Oh, with
that movie?
Yeah, with it had like every hunk.
Yeah, it did have a whole bunch of hunks. Henry Thomas, that's who I was thinking.
Love Henry Thomas.
A King alum.
I think I can remember like all of the cast. Hold on, because I watched that movie like 10 times. Okay. Henry Thomas, Sean Patrick Flannery, Johnny Galecki, Jeremy Sisto.
Yes.
Jay Moore.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, Christopher Walken, obviously. Dennis Leary, obviously.
Yes.
Is there one more guy?
I think
that might be everyone.
I think you got them all. Mark Watson, but I don't know who he is, so maybe.
Oh, I don't know him. Yeah.
Brad Garrett. The
great Brad Garrett.
Yeah, the great.
Everybody loves Raymond.
I still have never seen that movie. I was put off by the title Suicide, so I was like, no, thank you. As
that was a
young
real dude. That was a real dude's rock movie from the 90s. Yeah, that was like what me and the fellas watched in high school.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know why I didn't watch it because it does seem like something I would have been into. It feels like a little bit more like boarding school version of Young Guns or something, you know, with all the hunks in there. So it was like
it's posed that way too. It's I think the cover is legitimately styled after Young Guns cover. It's so funny we're talking about Suicide. I used to have it on VHS.
Oh, well, maybe I'll have to watch it now. Well, speaking of Suicide Kings, let's talk about Stephen King. And so talking about what he said about this book. So he first announced that this would be a trilogy when Mr. Mercedes won Best Mystery Novel at the 2015 Edgar Awards. And he said he got the idea to write it while walking, so walking on the road, which he writes about, and that's also where he suffered his near-fatal car accident. But he says he was scared to try it. And we talked about that a lot when we were talking about the previous two novels, but I thought this quote was really interesting. But eventually decided that if, after all you've been through, if you turn down a good idea, you're a fucking asshole. So then he announced that there would be a sequel and that Brady, the bad guy, as he called him, would return in the third book. So I feel like we asked this with Finders Keepers, but do we need a final chapter to this story?
That's a great question. Need? No. But I'm glad we got one. Like, what I appreciate about this is it has a very conclusive ending, at least for one of our characters. And he literally shuts the book on Hodges. And I think that is kind of nice. Obviously, we get a lot more from some of these characters that go on and on and on. But at least for Hodges, it's kind of nice to have some sort of conclusion and to feel like, yeah, that makes sense and that's appropriate and feels like we can send him off in a good way. So, yeah, I think so.
Especially since Brady was still creeping around.
Yeah, I mean, it's set up definitely in book 2 that there's more to come. But I think we actually, I'm not the biggest fan of this trilogy, but like I think we did need this one just because it really feels like the actual sequel to Mr. Mercedes. Because we talked about this in our Finders Keepers episode. You could ostensibly remove the Finders Keepers crew from that book and have a perfectly fine novel all on its own. They are more or less incidental to the book. They're supporting players in the book. And so this is really the sequel. And it almost makes it feel like a smaller story in a way because it's a return to Brady. Although the question of what Brady represents here is one of the things I really want to talk about because he's sort of less a person than a boogeyman in this. And that's really interesting. That's actually one of my favorite parts of the book. So at the same time, I think there is a diminished aspect to it. I don't know. I think this is a very weird direction for the trilogy to go. And I think I might like it more if it did a more Finders Keepers thing where it told a standalone story. But I do think that there were a lot of things that needed to be wrapped up.
Yeah. Well, and also when I think about trilogies, I feel like they carry a certain weight to them, just like the packaging of them. If there are 3, it feels like an intentional thing. It feels like Lord of the Rings or like the Scream trilogy, which has the perfect ending for Sydney, and I will hear nothing else. But like, do we think the fact that this is a trilogy lends it more weight and makes it a more prominent element of King's canon, as opposed to if it was just this and End of Watch and then Finders Keepers was completely separate?
I mean, that's the thing is like, I think it has surface weight, but I don't know, man, like this story really doesn't land with, I think, the reverberating impact that I'm going to read some reviews shortly that I think a lot of critics were getting from it. I find this to be a relatively minor story, especially in the King canon, and one that I'm not very keen on revisiting. And I think the trilogy, I think the idea of a trilogy gives it weight, sure, but I'm not sure it fully lands that way, at least for me. But I feel like I'm going to unpack that idea more as we talk.
Yeah, I think so. And we could maybe revisit that when we're giving our final thoughts too. Part of me feels like I think Hodges, like the trilogy really needs an anchor. And if Hodges is the trilogy, it is called the Hodges trilogy, then I don't know if Hodges is enough of an anchor for me to,
It's like your mileage may vary with him, right? Like if you're a big Hodges head or a Hodges homie, you might like really be incredibly moved by it all. But I think also since he's a relatively minor part of the second novel, that in some ways I think impacts it as him being the anchor of it. Because I feel like in that book we don't really learn a lot more about him. In book 1, book 3, we get a lot about Hodges, but in book 2 it's like it's not his story, which makes it feel like a weird, I don't know, like a weird middle point. Because like usually I think like the second book in a trilogy is where, I mean, this is just like from things that I've read, but it feels like sometimes that's where the action peaks almost. And it's not really like that in that book. So
like Empire Strikes Back is my favorite.
Yes.
Like
that's
there's
a
so
great
much,
example.
it's a great opportunity to go dark, to really expand some of these characters and leave it on a cliffhanger because you're going to have that third one to wrap it all up. And it does feel like Finders Keepers is kind of a plateau. It's like they climb up this mountain and then they just kind of hang out there, Finders Keepers, and now we're on the downslope. I like where it ends, but yeah, it does feel like a pit stop more than an earned second installation in a trilogy.
Pit stop is a great phrase.
Yeah, or like a spin-off of the Hodges teams comings and goings.
If
and
he
like
didn't, if he didn't die in this one, it almost
Yeah.
feels like Finders Keepers could just be like the next thing. Like, oh, the next new
And
adventures of
case,
Like
Hodges.
Holly. Yeah.
And that's how the series is. I mean, the series is Finders Keepers is season 3. Speaking of, check out those episodes if you've watched the series.
Yeah. Also, side note, I was watching Jeopardy once and they asked a question about the Hodges trilogy, but the correct answer they gave was the Mercedes trilogy. And I was livid. Like, I
How dare
was
you.
almost writing letters to Jeopardy. I was like, no, sir, that's not what it is
Mr.
called.
Trebek, I am disappointed in
I
you.
know. Well, it was Ken Jennings at this point.
Ken.
I was like, Ken, you should know better. Shame on you, Ken.
Put a note on Trebek's grave.
I know. Yeah. He was rolling over for sure. It also could have been my bialic. I can't remember for sure. All right. Well, let's talk about the release. So this was released on June 7th, 2016. Note that date. And so on that day, he was on the CBS morning show. Side note, Charlie Rose, who is no longer on that show, clearly knows nothing about Stephen King because he was asking, like, where do you get your ideas and some stupid stuff. Can you believe you write scary stuff? All right, so Gail.
That's how a lot of those morning show interviews are. I talked about that, and I can't remember. I think it was Revival. Like, he was on Morning Joe, and those are just the most evil people I have ever seen. And like the way they were talking to him, like he was. I think he loves them, so I don't. He'd probably say I'm crazy, but I was watching it just being like, these people could not possibly care less about anything you've ever done. But you know,
I know. I was like, how dare you? I saw him on Stephen Colbert once after he got the medal, and they had his books stacked up, and they were like, look how tall they are. And I was like, you sons of bitches. Like,
Yeah.
I have 20 questions I would ask him. But all right. So Gail King, who does seem very familiar with him, she kept calling him Uncle Stevie. And I was like, that's a constant reader there. So she said, what's attractive about crime fiction? And King answered, well, I've read suspense and mystery fiction my whole life, and I don't think that I could ever write an Agatha Christie type mystery where all the pieces are in place and you discover in the final chapter who done it, but I like the Hitchcock idea. Hitchcock once said the difference between horror and suspense is horror is when a bomb goes off. Suspense is when you see the bomb under the table and the people are having a normal conversation and they don't know it's there and the time is ticking down. You know in End of Watch who the bad guy is, and if you've read the other two, you absolutely know who the bad guy is. So he also did the 2016 National Book Festival, and he talked about the development of the trilogy. He thought the first book would be the only book, but he didn't want to let the characters go. Felt like they had unfinished business. Now, we may have more to say about that later, but he started with a pre-suicidal cop who would be brought back to life with a criminal. So I do kind of like the bookends of this being really about suicide. And then he said, I think sometimes you're right to find out what you think, and one of the things I've dealt with in some of my fiction is the idea of getting older, because that sort of happened to me when my back was turned, all at once. I turn up and I'm 69 years old, and so it's natural to write about a character like Bill Hodges. And then later, talking about the difference between horror and suspense, we have this kind of literary prejudice in America. It's almost like a child who will say, oh, I can't eat this because 2 or 3 kinds of food are touching on my plate. And in a lot of places, we don't have that kind of prejudice. In fact, there's a thing that I've done with a lot of my career that the Spanish writers and the Latin American writers call magical realism. It's a respected genre. Over here, you get stuck in the horror section of the bookstore instead. So I go where the story leads, and sometimes it is a little bit outrageous, and I relish that. I sort of want to be as much on the edge as I can, and I want to engage the reader. I'm an emotional writer in the sense that I'd be happy if you reread a book for the intellectual or mental part of it, which is what we do. But the first time, I just like to reach out and grab you, pull you in. All right, so my question, does this still feel like a crime novel, or do we feel the horror sneaking in?
Rachel, I'm curious what you think, because you've read a lot more crime fiction than me.
I have.
You've written some crime fiction.
Yeah, in middle school, I wrote my own. No, I don't think it still feels like a crime novel. It's dark, to be sure. Like, this is I find it to be a pretty unsettling book in a lot of ways. But I also don't feel like it's really like a horror novel either. I kind of felt like it was more like a lukewarm techno thriller. That's how I came to it. And King's incredible, to be sure, but William Gibson or Michael Crichton, he is not. Let's just say that. And I cannot wait to talk about some of the technology in this book.
Zap it suicide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but what I do appreciate about it is that it feels like a Stephen King version of this genre. Like it feels like Stephen King doing detectives, Stephen King doing crime. And so it feels like something we can expect from Uncle Stevie. But would you file this on the, with all the other crime novels? No, it's going in the Stephen King horror section.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like they're a set now. When I took the book jackets off, they're red and all the other ones are black. So like, can you put it on a different shelf, or do you have to put it with a trilogy? And does this pull the trilogy over to horror, or does this pull End of Watch over to crime? So this is
definitely the least crime novel of the three, but also the least scary of the three.
I think so too. Yeah.
Like the first two they had very real threats, and by the End of Watch, Brady can possess a body and pose a real threat. But even when he is possessing Babineau or Library Al, even then, he doesn't feel like this unpredictable force killing and injuring with impunity as Brady Hartsfield. Like, Brady Hartsfield and Morris Bellamy were very much so. They seemed very chaotic, and like I could be hurt by them at any moment. And in this one, it's like, just don't pick up a Zap It, and you're fine. Don't play the fishy game.
But what if he makes you play the fishy game, Ashley?
That's true. There was a quote in here that I say that was so funny that was like, look at the fucking fishies. And it was actually fishies. And I was like, that's hilarious. I love that so much.
It's like that old Tyler, the Creator quote on Twitter where he was just like, what is cyberbullying? He's like, just get up and walk away.
Just turn it off.
It was very funny to me. And like, I definitely felt that way too. I felt like, I'm not going to get into it. I think the Zap It thing is so fascinating, and I really, really look forward to talking about that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too because, I know we probably had repeated a couple of quotes because we were talking about Mercedes and or Mr. Mercedes, and now we're talking about the end of the trilogy. But I do think it's interesting to think about the beginning of this trilogy, a genre that King found really intimidating. And I feel like by the end of this trilogy, I think he feels pretty comfortable with it, but also he's pulled it into his world.
Yeah,
he inched back towards his comfort zone, I think.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, I remember when I first read it, I was like disappointed that it got supernatural. Although
a lot of people were.
Yeah. And like, because I was like, well, commit to the bit, but I guess the question too is he kind of does try to leave it open as to how much of this is the medicine that the doctor was giving him,
true.
and how much of it is a supernatural thing. Like and just how much of it was him getting bonked on the head. I almost like, and I want to talk about that more later, just I'm almost annoyed at him not putting a foot down somewhere. The show kind of tries to do this too, but they lean a lot more into the idea that it was the medicine. They do leave it open to ambiguity, but it's like, I appreciate the show a little bit more for leaning a lot more into that. I feel like, and I had forgotten how little discussion there is about the stuff Babineau is feeding him. There's like maybe 4 lines that speak about it, about the cerebellum. It's such a minor part of the book, and I was very surprised by that. But I digress.
Well, that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. And, as someone who will talk forever about Firestarter, that's another book where it's about the medicine, and everything that happens is because of this Lot 6 test and the shop. And so, and I would consider that horror, but also sci-fi. So do we find a little bit of sci-fi in this story, or does it feel more horror?
Yeah, definitely.
No, I think there's sci-fi in here, to be sure. And just, the whole technology aspect of that, like, I think that can fall under the sci-fi umbrella.
That's true.
And I think you could have tied in the shop even with that medicine.
That would have been
been
awesome.
Dope.
He's so resistant to doing it because the Institute, it was the biggest layup ever. And he was like, nah, I don't want to do that.
I know. He is never going to give me another Charlie story, and I'm going to want it until the day I die. But, well, Randall, what did the critics think?
They love it.
Wow.
They really did.
It's kind of wild.
I know. I gotta be honest. This book and this is like maybe just being in my own little bubble, but I feel like this book is certainly not considered amongst the King faithful as one of the big ones, one of the highlights. And so I was actually really surprised that not only were the reviews good, they were fawning. But then I want to cap it off by reading, I think, a very smart and level-headed review from Grady Hendrix from his Great Stephen King Reread, which is an excellent read.
Yeah.
I felt like he made me feel sane again, and we'll talk about that. And it's not that I think this book deserves to be panned or anything. It's certainly, I don't think it's like a bad book. I think, but I don't think it necessarily earns some of these raves. So this is the Washington Post. They said, fear takes countless supernatural forms in Stephen King's works. Teens and children with deadly pyrotechnic or telekinetic gifts, murderous clowns, global plagues, haunted resort hotels in small towns, suddenly and inexplicably cut off from the rest of the world. But few of these myriad terrors feel as visceral and close to home as the sense of human mortality that looms over King's new book, End of Watch. Third in a recent series of novels and linked by the same rotating cast of characters and the same inciting catastrophe, End of Watch is as much melancholy elegy as it is undeniable page-turner. Not long ago, the events described here would seem as improbable, and I'm jumping ahead in the review a little bit, as improbable as a haunted 1958 Plymouth Fury named Christine. Today, however, quantum advances in neuroscience, computers, and social media make End of Watch seem creepily plausible, especially in its vivid depiction of the diabolical game Fishin' Hole and the reactions of those vulnerable people, mostly teenagers who are susceptible to its deadly subliminal message. Throughout his tale, King nimbly pulls together numerous plot threads and characters, adding a few from Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers, and for good measure throws in a final nail-biting chase through a blizzard. One finishes this novel feeling great empathy for its resolute protagonist and even greater trepidation about that next round of Candy Crush.
Wow.
Okay, chase through a blizzard. I feel like they did not, in fact, read this novel. That does not happen once.
Okay, The Guardian.
There's snow and
there's a car and there's a blizzard. I'm not sure.
What do you want from me?
The Guardian said it ramps up at a frightening pace to a gory confrontation that pays bloody homage to the creator of one of fiction's most enduring serial killers, Thomas Harris, to whom the book is dedicated. End of Watch may be a return to more classic King fare, I'm not sure about that, but it's still Bill and Holly's decidedly down-to-earth detecting that makes the novel shine. Okay, USA Today says, the Mercedes novels have shown a new side to King as he spun noir and pulp tropes into a modern yarn, weaving in our dependence on technology and the crippling effects of loneliness, obsession, and aging. Yet he's also introduced iconic foes to enjoy, not unlike Batman and the Joker.
Wow.
Hodges and Brady...
Wow.
Or should I say the Jocker. Hodges and Brady live to torment one another, yet there's something very relatable about these two. It's a young versus old dichotomy, high-tech versus old-school tension between a pair of men who down deep share common ground. End of Watch brings finality to their story and to the trilogy, as strong a King series as The Dark Tower in terms of characterization and pure storytelling. When it comes to the gumshoe genre, though, fingers crossed King's not yet close for business.
You're going to turn me into the Jocker with these reviews.
I know, I became the Jocker reading these. One more, and then we're going to get some level-headedness.
Some sanity.
Yeah. Janet Maslin, the New York Times, who really, 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 loves Stephen King. Especially, I started noticing her kind of, I don't know, her kind of love. I was trying to find the right word, but I'll just say all caps love for him around Under the Dome, probably. She says, there are many stereotypical themes and devices in crime fiction: righteous cops shooting a criminal at the novel's end, gender constructs salvaged from another age, invincible heroes, and so on. End of Watch is burdened by none of them. It's a great, big, genre-busting romp, a gloriously fitting end to the Bill Hodges trilogy. I will add, she did have one quote that made me feel sane. She said, Jerome Robinson is an African-American who started out cutting Hodges' grass and doing odd jobs and is now a Harvard undergraduate. If there were such a thing, Robinson should win the title of White Gaze Character of the Year.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Which, that's all I have to say about Jerome in this episode. But, okay. Tor, this is where Grady Hendrix wrote his Great Stephen King Reread. Very good reading. He actually talked about how... in this piece about how critics were so horrible to him for most of his career. And then after he won the National Book Award, he says that it's almost as if the critics began overpraising him. And he read some of he listed out some of the reviews of Mr. Mercedes, which were so rhapsodic, so over the top, fawning of it. And he was kind of saying like, what's going on here? Like, calm down, everyone. And and then this is what his review says, which I think is quite good. He says, this Hartsfield masterminds a complicated and awkward revenge plan. We get to deal with some of the most hackneyed writing of King's career. Holly is someone who, quote unquote, thinks outside the box, sometimes way outside of it. And her eyes are, quote unquote, beautiful and full of intelligence. Hartsfield develops a phantom hand like the main character in Doohickey. He uses incontinence as a form of revenge against his caretakers, as in Dolores Claiborne. Ooh. And the people he psychically manipulates become dirty and unkempt, like the people pushed by Andy McGee in Firestarter. Characterization is inconsistent. Cops go behind their partners' backs and then give lectures on partner loyalty, and previously undisclosed evidence pops up as needed. King's written about aging and dying a lot in his recent books, and the most interesting parts of this trilogy revolve around Hodges' mortality. But ultimately, detective fiction doesn't feel like a fit for King, maybe because plot has never been his strong suit, and detective novels are largely plot-driven. He's always been far more interested in character, and that may account for why this trilogy feels so clunky in his hands. Or it may be because King was a fan of crime fiction first, and like Annie Wilkes in Misery, fans don't necessarily make the best writers. Ooh. Either way, End of Watch debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for 3 weeks, the only book in the series to hold the top spot for more than a week. But it dropped off the list just as quickly as the others, falling out of the top 10 after 9 weeks, and disappearing from the list altogether by week 11. And that's what these books do too. They hang around in your mind while you read them, and then a few weeks later, you try to remember the details, but poof, they're gone. And that just reminded me of how little I remembered after my first read of this, where I was literally on episode saying, oh yeah, Lou's not even or Freddy's not even in the book. And I was like, oh, that's user error on my part. But then I'm like, or is it? It isn't, but it's just kind of like, it's like this book made such little impact on me when I first read it. And that's not usually true of King. I don't forget King books. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like even Fairy Tale, which is a book I didn't love. I read that, about a year and a half ago. I remember it quite vividly, you know, and that's true. And even Holly, which is a book I didn't love. I remember parts of that much more than I do the Hodges trilogy. And I think part of that is just, I don't like Bill Hodges.
I don't want to remember him. Yeah, try taking notes on a head full of Dayquil. I felt insane when I was taking my notes.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that I forgot just from the beginning of this novel to the end. Mm-hmm. Like when Barbara, there's a quote at the end about like how Jerome shows up because Barbara said something to him. And I was like, oh yeah, Barbara got hurt. Like I literally forgot.
That feels like such a wedged in sequence too.
It does. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it. And I just feel like there's not a whole lot of resonance to this book or to this series as a whole. And that's coming from someone like I have a dad who is Hodges' age and is dealing with a lot of things that I think Hodges is kind of experiencing, you know. And I am always ready to jump in and just put my psychiatrist hat on and dig into these themes. But there's something about this that just feels kind of slight and like trepidatious. And I wonder if it's just like a hesitancy to really fully commit to this crime fiction thing. And that's why we don't really get the full weight of like books like The Stand or like Firestarter or like Misery that like will stay with me for the rest of my life. And I'll say like, parts of those books I think have changed pieces of me, you know, and I just don't really get any of that from these
Which is
three.
wild because this book's all about death and mortality and legacy and like suicide and these extremely like huge capital I issues. And but I think maybe it's leaning too hard into them or it's trying too hard to be profound that because you know, then maybe it just doesn't hit as hard.
Or the characters seem very inaccessible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why.
I really like that word for it.
I do too. Yeah. And I remember a long time ago, I met a friend and found out he was reading some Stephen King. And of course I jumped all over him and I was like, oh, what's your favorites? And he said the Hodges trilogy. And I was like, oh, okay. You don't really like Stephen King.
You haven't read Stephen King, clearly.
Gatekeeper.
I know. It was awful. And then he read it later and didn't like it. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work out. But
I don't know if we can be friends.
I know. But I wonder, and I'm kidding, like think whatever you want about Stephen King books. I will love you either way.
I gave him a zap it.
Thank you. Yes, here, I'll mind control him from here. I wonder if this is a normie trilogy that people who want to read Stephen King but are too scared to read Stephen King can access. You know, that word accessible.
I think it is accessible. I think it's accessible in the sense that, it's not horror, right?
Yeah,
and
like horror light.
Yes, and I think for people who wouldn't naturally read Stephen King, like these are books that you get at the airport, right? You can get like, so they're everywhere, and people are just like, oh, it's like Stephen King, but not as gory or something, which is funny because these books are very gory.
I know.
But yeah, I do think for some people it's who don't live the horror lifestyle. You know what I mean? It's like these are I think they kind of see them maybe as they would a Sue Grafton book or an Ed McBain book or something that you can pick on, read on a flight, and keep moving. Although I don't think they read like that. That's honestly, I found, except for Finders Keepers, which I thought moved pretty swiftly, I thought the first book and the third book were kind of sloggy and which is unfortunate, you know? So
they're like horror fans with X's on their hands, you know? Sorry, that's talking about something we talked about off air. Sorry, gentle listener. All right. Well, since I just broke format, let's go to structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher. Look.
All right, from the 2016 National Book Festival. So they talk quite a bit about writing in the present tense, which we had mentioned, I think, in a previous episode, but I don't know if we'd ever officially said like he had never tried that before, and that was one of the things that he felt nervous about, but also some of the things I think we had kind of enjoyed about these books. I think it makes them move. But do we think that King has nailed the detective novel format by this third time out? I know it doesn't quite feel like a detective novel. Do we find him getting bored with the format or feeling like he's got it in hand?
I feel like he threw the format out the window.
Yeah,
I agree.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
I don't see much of a format.
I guess
here.
for the way that this book sort of landed for me in terms of how it's structured, and actually I think it's somewhat similar to Mr. Mercedes in this regard, is that we spend a lot of time going, like basically watching Hodges and Holly and Jerome and company sort of have a piece of evidence and pick it apart and try to understand how did this happen. And then we get... and it feels like it takes forever. Like in the first book, it was the fucking key fob. I felt like there was 150 pages about the fucking key fob. And then we get Brady's point of view and we learn how he did it. And rinse and repeat. We get that here too with the Zappets. And we get this whole thing of like, how did the Zappets work? Where did they come from? How was this used? And then we get a Brady section where he explains where they came from, how he used them. The thing that, and maybe that's like a fine way to write detective fiction, but I think what doesn't really land for me is that it doesn't feel surprising. A lot of the things that Hodges sort of pinpoints in his investigation almost always ends up being correct. And so when we get to Brady explaining it, he's kind of just telling us what we already know with more detail.
Recapping.
Yeah.
Yes. And that to me is, I think, what makes it not great crime fiction. Although I'm hesitant to say that because I don't read a ton of crime fiction. So, but I will just say I found it to be lacking in surprise, which made it feel a little sloggier because I was like, okay, I already kind of know all this. I'm just getting this different POV and I'm getting more detail. But I mean, the problem with this book, though, more than Mr. Mercedes, I think Mr. Mercedes works a lot more than this book, is that it's so fucking convoluted. Like to learn how Brady did what he did
I still
is
don't know how
a
he did it.
lot. I know, that's the thing. It's over explaining to the point of where it just makes it less clear, like because it's over explained to such a degree and it's just exhausting. So
there's also a lot of detective work in this that I feel like was just sort of like handed to Hodges and Holly. Like I remember at one point where they were at the house with the mother-daughter that ended up getting deemed like a murder-suicide. And like the whole reason they got on a zap it is Holly was like, well, I saw something plugged in the bathroom and I knew it was an e-reader charger, but I didn't see an e-reader and it didn't look like the e-reader that I had. And it's like, first of all, I have like a charger for like the file to file down like the scaly foot skin. I have a charger for like lights and like little like touch lights. I have chargers. Like in no world, I don't think, even back when this book was written, would you see a charger and go, e-reader, where is it? And also why?
And she just found it in the chair.
And then she found it.
It wasn't like actually,
Like,
that's the thing. Like it wasn't actually related to the fact that she saw the charger and was looking for it. It was like, oh, I randomly put my hand in the couch and here's a zap it.
Yeah. So a lot of
Chargers
that,
everywhere.
it's not really detective work. It's just sort of like you found a thing.
Yeah.
And it
Or
happened to be the
intuition.
key to the whole. Yeah, maybe if they leaned more into Holly having some sort of sixth sense, it would have made more sense than her just sort of finding stuff.
I feel like Hodges half the time was just remembering things.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many times where he's like, oh, something about this is nagging me. And then 200 pages later, he's like, oh, yeah, Freddie. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Or, oh, yeah, I knew I had seen Zappet somewhere. It's like, okay, I know you're old, but this is not detective work. You're just remembering
Just
things. Like
remembering
if you were
stuff.
actually maybe a little bit better of a detective, you
Yeah,
would
and
have a
that's
little bit
like-
quicker on the draw there.
Grady Hendrix brings that up too, where he noted like the previously undisclosed evidence like pops up as needed. You know,
Yeah.
it does feel a little bit convenient, and I think with crime fiction, you really want to feel as if like
You're
every
solving it
discovery
with
has been
them.
hard earned. You know what I mean? That it really
Yeah.
took like a creative approach or something along those lines to find it, not just happenstance or coincidence. You know?
Yeah.
And even with Holly, it feels like Hodges is leading her on, like he knows the answer, and he's like, okay, all right, keep going. Like he's eggs her on to like follow that thread, right? To pull on that thread, but he doesn't know jack shit either. So,
Yeah.
or if you do know, like, what are you doing? Just solve it. Why do you have to? I don't know. Feel like you have to hold her hand through this.
Yeah.
And I feel like it almost undermines Holly's abilities a little bit in this, because I do believe that King believes that she can see things differently, and that different perspective makes her a good detective. And I love that about this character. And I almost feel like by Hodges constantly being like, keep on it, you're almost there, it's just kind of, I don't know, makes her a little childish in some ways. And it's like, okay, Hodges, oh, you know it all, huh? You just know it all.
He is, and that's what I've complained about in other episodes. He's a fucking know-it-all, and that's part of what makes him annoying.
Yeah, but he doesn't really know that much too. Like he's like
That's
the
the
worst kind, you know.
Well, he's never wrong, and like that's what bothers me. I'm like, it's so much more interesting if like, you know, that's why like I think the old drunken detective archetype, you know, like the kind of hapless but also brilliant kind of detective archetype is so useful, because then you have this guy who is so inherently flawed and broken, but then he's also, you know, has these like flashes of brilliance. And I feel like Hodges is somebody who, you know, on the surface he has these like undesirable qualities, but overall I never feel like we're meant to have anything but admiration and respect and like and awe at his like prowess, which I don't think is that impressive.
And I think that's part of the problem with this approach of letting the story lead, you know, and, you know, Randall, in some of those reviews you were mentioning plotting, and that's not really his strong suit. And I think some of his best novels come from letting the story lead. Like I think about Misery and reading that thing and being like, where the fuck is this thing going? And just loving every second of it, because there's this whole thing about bees and then it's just incredible, but you can't really do that here. And so I think that's why it feels like things are popping up as they need to be discovered, because he's letting the story lead and then realizing he had to set that table earlier. So he's just setting it real quickly, you know?
Yeah, the timeline for this one, for me, is rough. Because whereas in the last one, I felt like that flipping back and forth between the past decades and the present was actually such a, like, powerful momentum builder for the story, because we knew, these timelines are going to intersect, and like what's going to happen, like we know what this is building to. But here I felt like the switching back and forth was almost arbitrary. Like you were saying, it almost feels like, oh yeah, shit, I should have probably set that up earlier.
Yeah.
And it feels really messy because it's kind of hard to tell exactly where we're at. Like, wait, how long ago was this? Was this yesterday? Was this 6 months ago? What are we doing here? And it doesn't really add anything by flipping back and forth. I almost wish like it just was a little bit more streamlined or a little bit conservative and more conservative in how it approached that flopping all over, because it just
Yeah,
no, it's very confusing as to what's actually happening and when it's happening.
there was a moment like a fourth of the way through the book that we actually rewound time back to the beginning. We see it all through Brady. We basically get to see what he's been up to during the events of Finders Keepers. And I actually really loved that portion of the story. I liked him turning himself back on using control, chaos, darkness.
Yeah.
I liked him subtly moving things in the hospital room and realizing he can get into people's heads. Like, it was really creepy and I liked it. But then the fish and the Z's and the full tilt possessions, like there's a point it all loses me. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I tried to pinpoint it, and I really do think it's when Barb gets hit by the car and it cuts to Brady shutting down his Zappit, and he's like, got her, to Dr. Babineau. And all of a sudden I'm like, Babineau's in on it?
Yeah.
Babineau is handled, we don't have to talk about this all right now. Babineau is handled very poorly in this book. He is introduced, I think, too quickly. We never really spend time with him outside of being possessed by Brady, so it's like hard to have any grasp of what that character is.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy because I don't love how that character manifests in the series either, but it's a lot better.
It's better.
It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of when I think about the first two books, like one of the things that I really liked about them is these dueling characters. You know, in the first one we have Brady and Hodges, and even the cover of the book has like their two faces juxtaposed because it's constantly going back and forth between the two of them. And then in Finders Keepers we have Morris and Pete, and there it's kind of the same thing. I think it's more effective in Mr. Mercedes, but it's still these kind of dueling characters. And here I don't really know who that is.
Who are
it
they?
feels like fading Hodges and like fading Brady, and then we've got all these other characters kind of coming in, and I think it just dilutes the power a lot. And that's part
I think
of
ostensibly
why,
it is still them, because when you look at the structure, like we're talking about, it's like it does bounce between the two of them, but that I think it speaks to the idea that it's not as elegantly handled, and also that Brady is less of a character in this and more of a boogeyman
A bunch of half characters.
And that's something we'll talk about more later. But
Yes, absolutely. I do want to mention one thing that I do enjoy about the way these are structured. I like that each book begins with going back to the City Center massacre,
Agree.
you know, and I like that he is finding different ways of incorporating that story. Like first it's the people that died, and then it's Pete Sauber's dad who's injured for the rest of his life, and then it's the first responder. So I like this idea that this is collateral damage, and that this has rippled out and caused so much more pain than we initially thought, even though that was pretty awful. And I like seeing that sequence, which I think is one of the strongest sequences in the entire trilogy. I like seeing it through all these different characters' eyes. When we see those two characters we meet at the very beginning of Mr. Mercedes, we see them like squashed in the sleeping bag, and then we see Pete Sauber's dad like talking about him. So I think that is well done.
I definitely want to talk about that in the next section, because I think that sort of speaks to the strongest thematic strength in the book.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Each one sets the stage for kind of the discussion that we're going to have throughout the rest of the book, like in those opening sequences. Like, I feel like he sets the table really well for some of the themes that he's going to address to varying degrees of success, I think.
Yeah.
But it kind of like tips you off as to like, okay, this is the kind of ideas that we're going to explore. And for me, I really enjoy that because it also makes sense and fits. And just seeing it all from different perspectives, like you said, really makes that event carry a lot of weight throughout the entire series.
Yeah, I really like how King keeps taking us back to that first section. And you know what else takes you back? The hook takes you back.
Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Getting out my harmonica. So let's talk about the hook.
Our Gen Z listeners will have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, and they're missing a great song with a really fast.
They're gonna be like,
but all the millennials will.
They will, and they're pausing the podcast to put it on in their car, possibly still with a CD. All right, so let's talk about the hook. I was going to start with suicide, but let's talk about the way he sets the table here with the city center massacre kind of spurring everything forward.
Yeah, this is what I think works best about the book and what unifies the trilogy as an exploration of how one horrible kind of destructive event has these ripples that carry out across years and affect multiple people. And that's something I think the series captures pretty well, too. And the series also starts each season with returning to the massacre. And they do some unique things with it in the third season, especially. But I think that the book is maybe best, or these books all are best viewed as like the collateral damage, the fallout of a horrible traumatic event like this has on a community, especially one that is already struggling like financially and in a time of economic precarity. All of those things to me are the most compelling aspects of these books. And I think in a way there's something and this is where I want to talk a little bit about what I think Brady represents in this book specifically. In the first book, he is a boogeyman in the sense that he is, the killer that got away. He is somebody who wreaked havoc, hurt all these people and these vulnerable people, like deeply vulnerable people, and then got away with it. And isn't that how everything goes these days, right? Mm-hmm. And then we see that like financial precarity, this sort of like shitty economy, all of that is reverberating throughout the town, and the fallout of the city center massacre like only makes that much worse. Like Peter Sauber's dad, as we see, is like he can't work because of the injury that he got from that, and his entire life is falling apart. And we see sort of the cumulative damage of it, that this family is collapsing into financial ruin. And Peter like finds this money in the woods, starts sending it to his family, and he, essentially like finds himself in deep shit. But he didn't really have a choice. Like in this economy, in this world, you see an opportunity like that and you take it because, the old ways don't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that more too later. But it's like, but then Brady, what he comes to represent in this book is a sort of mind virus, right? Mm-hmm. Do any of you guys know the Kiyoshi Kurosawa horror movie Pulse?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
It's an excellent movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Kiyoshi Kurosawa's movies are very much about sort of an ambient kind of disease or virus that kind of spreads without any logic and often results in self-harm or suicide or things of that nature. And this was, End of Watch reminded me a lot of Kurosawa's like storytelling. But Paul specifically is about the internet. Mm-hmm. And about that there is some sort of like ineffable, unarticulated thing about the internet that leads all these people to commit suicide, and they're trying to like understand that. And this book is really touching on a lot of those things, but that's sort of in that book or in that movie, what the unspeakable and what's what I'm looking for, just like ineffable viruses, the sort of invisible viruses, that's what Brady is here. Yeah. Because he even literally becomes detached from his own body, and he finds this way through the Zappets to speak to people's insecurities. And what he comes to represent is like he kind of goes that full transition from bad guy to boogeyman, but he's so much that like it leans so deep into that we don't even get him in the end. We like the final fight is someone who is possessed by him. Mm-hmm, yeah. And so what Brady kind of represents is the residue of this traumatic event that lingers in the heads of all of those it touched, whether directly or indirectly. And it kind of spreads, this is poison like black mold, in people's heads that poisons their thoughts and sticks with them for years. And that to me is a really, 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 really compelling idea, especially. But the thing is, I think that King was trying to work in this notion of the internet and being online and like this sort of idea of, because,
then
you know,
we
if you
should
want
have
to talk
done
about
that.
Yeah, I know, right? But that's like, I think what the Zappets come to represent is the screen, the way the screen breeds insecurity, the way the screen breeds, you know, various kinds of anxiety and discontent. And those ideas, I think, are really, really cool. The problem is the Zappet, I don't think, was necessarily the right vessel to do it. So I don't know. I guess like that's what I'm getting at is the residue of an event like that and what it does to people's brains and bodies for years after. I mean, 9/11 is one example, right? Like the impact, the effects of that, of what people experienced that day are still hurting them, are still killing them, are still leading to mental health crisis and suicide.
Yeah, it's still
and
hurting
that's
the
kind
whole
of,
country.
Yeah, it's hurting the whole
Still.
country. And so Brady being this representative of that horrible virus is really interesting, but the question is how well that manifests in fiction.
Well, that's the thing. It's a pulse idea, right? But it's a fear.com execution.
Holy shit. That is...
I'm going to get that
almost choked
tattoo.
up his drink, yeah. And I think part of that is because there's, like, when I think about Pulse, that force is like a nothing, you know? It's almost like the nothing in the Neverending Story, I think. But here we have Brady, and so it's kind of like, who is just like a little kid on a power trip who has found this way into people's heads, and he feels more like an incel shit poster, you know? And there's a lot of horror in that too. I feel like I do really enjoy a story about, you know, Harold Lauder to the extreme, who just wants to hurt people because he hurts, but he doesn't understand that, and he can't figure out how to do anything but just cause pain. And that feels like a very relevant story right now too. The problem is I just don't think those two things go together. Like when we think about 9/11, the perpetrators were all gone. We didn't have a figure, and we didn't have somebody who was continuing to talk to us the way that Brady is. And so it was more just like a force. And I think that's what feels scary about that, is you can't quite put your finger on it. And with Brady, what feels scary to me is you don't quite know what he's going to do next. And I think the two just never quite fully merge, you know?
Yeah, it just doesn't come together. It's really convoluted with like Dr. Z, Z-Boy, Zappets, Fishies. Like when it all
That's where it
comes
gets
together,
the Z stuff,
it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah. I get lost in who Brady is. I just assume he's Brady the whole time.
There were several
you know?
chapters where I was like, who the fuck
Brady?
is Z-Boy again? I don't even know.
Exactly. I don't know which one is which.
Like, I can't imagine y'all watching the show. Like, his Harry Treadaway is Doremi, and that would be the reason why I would watch that. And if I'm having to watch some old Babineau dude instead of Harry Treadaway, that's not okay.
Well, they cast Jack Houston as Babineau in season 2, and he's pretty hunky, so yeah.
Yeah, he's not a 65-year-old with crazy white hair.
Yeah, I can't remember who I pictured. I think the guy from Hannibal that gets his face peeled off. That's who I pictured. Who ends up with all the pigs that they feed people to. I think that's who I was picturing as Babineau. And he did dedicate the book to Thomas Harris. So
there you go.
I think that's who he was picturing too.
Talking about like the opening, an idea that he does plant there that I think is really interesting. That I like how he kind of brings up time and time again in different ways, and he presents it through the paramedics, is really just kind of how quickly the value of one's life can change when you're confronted by that, and kind of how the daily choices we make all the time, every day, often stand in really like stark contrast, right, to what we know to be the most basic of truths, but because, you know, it's like a more long-term thing. It's like smoking, right? Everybody who's ever smoked knows it's not good for you. It's going to be bad.
But it's
this is going to catch up to you at some point.
But every time I get to
all do it,
Chicago,
right?
I'm going to smoke with you.
See, but it's kind of like that. You're postponing that, like, well, yeah, but that's not going to happen today.
Right.
But every so often you get confronted with these moments, like we see with Hodges and his diagnosis. Like these paramedics just were going through McDonald's and they knew how bad it was, but didn't care. They were hungry, like, whatever, that's not my problem right now. And then they get called off to this thing just by luck, by coincidence, the timing. They just happened to be closer. And now suddenly everything has changed. And I think that is one of the more interesting kind of conversations that we're having throughout this book. And just presenting it that way so early, I think, is really effective and one of the more effective parts of the book.
Yeah, and I like how it continues to spin throughout each of the 3 stories. And I think the biggest problem for me, too, is I feel like there are so many big ideas here that are just never fully answered.
Realized.
They kind of compete with each other. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, let's talk about, I think, maybe the most overt hook to the story, which is suicide. So, like I said, the Hodges trilogy begins with Hodges planning to die by suicide. Brady's always had a fascination with it and manipulating people into dying by suicide. He's kind of given like Manson vibes a little bit, or like wannabe Manson vibes.
Well, wannabe Jim Jones is kind
Jim
of,
Jones. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They literally say that in there, yeah.
That's right, yeah. And then the book ends with a montage of suicide scenes. I kind of feel like we might even need to give a trigger warning just talking about it right now. And then King ends the book by giving information from Uncle Stevie about the suicide hotline. So how do we feel about this element of the story?
It confused me a little bit only because I know that Brady in Mr. Mercedes, he did push Olivia to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tried working on Hodges, and then it grew into a whole thing. I didn't really see his obsession with suicide. To me, came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bit abrupt, I agree.
Yeah.
I think what may have happened was around the time, I mean, it's not just around the time, but I did some like research and I was looking, and it's true. And this is something I think we've all heard and absorbed over the last 15 years, but youth suicide rates, I found this piece in, I think CNBC, and it was about CDC studies, and it was youth suicide rates rose 62% from 2007 to 2021. Mm-hmm. And I was reading some of the stats, and it said financial instability has proven to be a large contributing factor in youth suicide. In a study of 21,000 people between ages 5 and 19, those living in the poorest areas were 37% more likely to die by suicide. And then I was also in that same study, there was discussion about how things have changed for young adults since the 1970s and 1980s. This is a quote from an expert they spoke to. They said life was generally more affordable, healthcare was more affordable, higher education was more affordable, there was more slack in the system, a child could make some errors, have some time to try things and drop things. There wasn't this focus on early childhood success. And then it also touched on the idea of suicide contagion, which refers to how one suicide in a community or geographic area can lead to others also resorting to suicide. These are things I think we've all heard and absorbed, and I think King did too. And so I think when he was writing this book, and he had set up this idea that Brady was,
a pusher,
capable of driving people to suicide. Yeah, but they really ramped it up in this book, and I think this was King sort of, in his a bit ham-fisted way, kind of tackling the teen suicide epidemic specifically. Like, there's no reason that Brady needed to target youth, right? In this book,
it was just easy.
Yeah.
It was easy, and also like I feel like this was, and that's why I think he added the Zappets too, because obviously social media and all those things and being on screens is absolutely a major factor in the rise in suicide rates for young people. Yeah. So it's like, I think he was really trying to work all this in. And I mean, when you look at the arc of the trilogy, I mean, the first book was a reaction to the economic crisis in itself and real events in the news, which we discussed on those episodes. So I think he, and I think that's true of Holly too. Like, I think these characters, I mean, look at the book Holly, it's all about COVID. It's like he really sees, I think, these books specifically as vessels for real world problems. And like much more overtly than in something like Under the Dome, which is a comment on the Bush era, and but in a more, for King at least, oblique way, abstract way. These books are very, very much, I mean, to the point where he's in the epilogue, I believe he's like quoting statistics, He has a character quoting statistics, just like in Holly, like characters in Holly are like quoting statistics about COVID, like just in the pages, which is kind of funny. But it's like, I think he's really sees these as vessels to discuss these bigger topics. And I think in doing so, there is, some heavy lifting and twisting in the actual plotting that doesn't quite work.
See, that's interesting because to me, it actually does feel really authentic to Brady. And I think the main thing that contributes to that is just the fact that in the first one, he's able-bodied. He can move around. He can physically do things. He can exist in the world in a different way. And then in this one, he kind of has everything taken away from him. Whereas in the first one, he does have some elements of control. It's just he's kind of flailing with how to use it and how to direct his energies and just kind of, it's like in his head he knows what he wants to do, but he can't actually execute all these horrible things and achieve everything he wants to achieve. Whereas in this one, he's confined to a bed, confined to his own head a lot of times. And so it's almost like an overcorrection in kind of that pursuit of that control is now he's just, well, I can't, I mean, when he's first in the bed, he probably can't even kill himself because he doesn't have enough control over his own faculties to even do that. And then as he starts to see I can go into somebody else's head, it's just, I mean, he's as self-loathing as they come, right? He's a garbage human on every level, and he just wants everyone to be as miserable as he is, especially when he's lying abed and literally can't get out of bed, can't put together words, can't move about. And so it's just, it feels to me like an authentic response to just desperately grasping for control and just trying to drag around as many people as possible. And then by that time that he is able to be Dr. Z or whatever and walk about the world, now he's just on like a power trip.
Yeah,
and
he's already got the
out.
plan. In place.
And control is the key word, right?
That's
it's
true.
Like, yeah, because that's the word he comes back to. Is that he has that line, murder isn't control, murder is just murder, suicide is control. And that's his justification, I think. And that's why he compares, or at least he envisions himself as a Jim Jones figure. And the comparison there is actually pretty interesting because, and they mention this in the book, but the idea of the white nights that Jones would conduct when in Guyana, because they were so isolated from the rest of the community or the rest of the world, he was always pretending or doing these drills where he would basically be like, we're being invaded, we're being invaded, we're being invaded. And he would do it in the middle of the night, and he would breed so much paranoia and fear and rage and hatred in these people that was how he developed such strong control over him. And that's kind of what Brady is sort of doing by getting in these people's heads. He is sowing his own or at least what he's attempting to do is to sow these levels of discord and make people hate themselves and feel full of rage and hate and all that stuff. It's an interesting idea, but the mechanics of it, it's like, that's where I go back to the Pulse thing. I'm like, Pulse just said, fuck it, I'm not going to explain how this works. That's what's scarier about it.
Well, and I think when I think about when we talked about The Green Mile, like that was written in installments. And one of the things he talked about was like, it's kind of like riding on a tightrope, because if you've already published that first installment, you can't go back and change it. And I think it works out very well in The Green Mile, partly because those are such small little, they're almost like novellas or short stories connected. But here, this is a full novel. And I wonder if by the time he was writing End of Watch, he was seeing this theme a little more clearly in Mr. Mercedes. And that's why it feels authentic. Because I agree with you, Rachel. I can see it there, but I also wonder if I see it because I've read the book 3 times now, and if like the first time I remember just being so frustrated because I was like, what are we doing? I don't know where this is going.
The first time I read this, I, for the record, did not like it. Hated it. Thought the Zappets, thought the fish, thought all. I was like, what is this? This is so obnoxious and so silly and so old manny that it drove me insane. And it's almost like I couldn't see past it. I couldn't see past all these ridiculous naming devices for things. And it didn't even have to be an actual physical object like a Zappet. It could have just been social media. They point out time and time again that social media exists in this world. It could have even just been a new social media platform or something, and it would have worked maybe even better. I don't know.
Had to have.
And so once I was able to get past that, I think I appreciated it more for the conversations it was having. But man,
you're saying
it's hard
I
to get
need
past
2
that
more
at first.
rereads.
You gotta just like accept it, let it wash over you, and just take in those words and just breeze right past them without overthinking it.
And I find that's the case for me a lot of times with this book and a lot of the Hodges stuff. and the Holly stuff later is like the more I read it, the more I find things that I really do enjoy. And that was my experience here too. I did enjoy the story because I think I'm now looking at the forest or the trees instead of the forest. And I'm not like, I remember reading Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers and could not wait to find out what was going to happen at the end. And I just don't get that here. And partly, I think, because the whole suicide montage at the end feels very off-putting, and it's just hard to read, you know, as a person who is kind of, you know, I don't know. I've had my share of suicidal ideation. And so I just sometimes struggle to engage with that. Even like in, I don't know, Groundhog Day, sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to watch this scene, even though I love that movie. But I remember being so frustrated by the end, because I was like, oh, these are kids we've never met before.
That's what's hard too.
They're just dying.
And like,
and it's hard.
We didn't meet them either when he was going to set off a bomb at the concert, but that seemed so much more, I don't know, urgent, and like, maybe urgent's not the right word, but that just seemed, it seemed like there was someone we were trying to save. I think in this one, like I was so, it was hard for me to picture like who we were trying to save, unless he was going after, you know, like Barbara, which, you know, I'm already like, why is she in the story? So that was hard to.
Well, we're also like these portraits we get of suicide. The only things we learn about these people really are their trauma and insecurities, and we're forced to swim in them, and then
we're
like,
a final push. They're already thinking about these things. He's just being those final extra, like,
and we feel so
hard-hitting, intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, we feel so bad for them, and we're like, oh God, don't do it, and then they do it.
Yeah,
and that's like really hard to read.
They think it's their thoughts, and just it's so sad to think that it's Brady in their head, and that's not even their own mind telling them that. That voice is not even them. That voice is just a little weasel boy.
Yeah, an incel.
Just saying these things. It's so tragic.
And because the story is told through Hodges' lens, we never get the value of realizing that those are not your thoughts. Those are intrusive thoughts come from outside. That is not you. And that's something that I've struggled with and had to like really kind of turn over in my mind. But we don't ever see these kids who do survive realize that. We kind of see Barbara realize it a little bit, although, you know, she's got her issues. And that's what I think feels different about the concert is there's joy there. Like they're having a great time, and it feels like there's something really at stake. And here, I don't know, it reminds me of the Mrs. Lonely Hearts segment of Cycle of the Werewolf, you know, which is one of the best segments in that book, but it's also just one. And that was in like the 80s, I think.
And I think it is like powerful in some ways because a lot of people never do realize that the voice is not representative of their heart. You know, I think that is powerful. It's a question though of how much do you want to rub our face in it, and how much, and that's how it feels at times. And it's not a critique necessarily. I think those scenes are well written and powerful. It's just there's such misery in this book that I think it is a very different kind of darkness than what we usually get in King books. It's so obsessed with like these very vulnerable people being forced to indulge their like most hateful thoughts and then have no recovery, and it is almost too real. And I don't say that I don't know. I'm not trying to like complain about it. It is just so deeply unpleasant.
Yeah, I just feel like it's the execution of it. I feel like if it was a social media site that these kids were visiting as opposed to the Zappets, where maybe the Brady was, you know, another kid their age who was sharing these thoughts with them and sort of like encouraging them in that way as like an external force. Because I don't know, like you said, like the little snippets that we do get to see are so heartbreaking, but there's also like there's no chance for them. There's no one's gonna, like, Bill Hodges isn't gonna bust through the door and like save them. Like there's no opportunity for us to save them. We just have to watch them die.
Yeah, and
hard.
I think like it just feels like a left turn too, you know, because we've been going along with this kind of, I wouldn't call it a cozy mystery or a cozy crime novel, but it's got elements of coziness. And I think the other book that fell, or the only book that fell in the middle of this trilogy, is Revival, which is super dark. And I love it because it is so dark. And I think I would have preferred, instead of this person being Brady, I would love to have read a book where King is really digging into intrusive thoughts and suicide. That's something that I can really engage with, and that's why I love Pulse so much, but why Pulse feels like such a hard movie to watch. It's so upsetting. And I wish it could. I think I want it to be more of like a Revival style book that is totally disconnected.
Are these characters the best vessel to explore these themes? Because I think the reason we love Finders Keepers a lot is because it's not a cozy mystery. There's a lot of really dark shit in there, but it's as close as this trilogy gets to a cozy mystery.
Right.
And like Revival is incredible, but you can tell like he's in death mode. You know? Let's talk about death. And clearly that is lingering into this book. Yeah. Those thoughts. And I mean, these are things he's been touching on for a while, but he's reckoning with himself. He said this in one of the quotes you read, Jen. You know, he's 69 years old. He's like, I'm gearing up for the end, you know, and he's writing about it all the time in a lot of these books. But is this really, I don't think Hodges, even though that's how he's posited in this book, he's not a character I like care about enough or find profound enough that I want to hear his musings about the end, you know?
I do think that Brady is a good vessel for some of these conversations. Because, I mean, you think about it, like, Brady is a troll. Like, there are people like this all the time that are just, you know,
I responded to one before we started recording.
And the first thing they're going to comment on is about something wrong with you, right? Yeah. You see celebrities talk about this all the time. It's just people are tearing them apart for whatever reason. Because they're jealous, because they're unhappy in their own life, and they just have to bring people down in their level. They just don't want to see people happy for whatever reason, right? And I think that Brady is a good vessel for that, because that's the kind of person that he is. But we're not talking about social media here. We're talking about Zappits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think in that same quote, Randall, that you just referenced, he talks about sometimes you write to figure out what you think. And I think you're completely correct. All of the Hodges/Holly books are him exploring current events and trying to figure them out through the lens of these characters. And I don't know if he just doesn't land on a clear idea here. And that's why it feels a little bit, I don't know, slight for such a heavy topic, you know?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I want to talk about the supernatural elements of the story too, but because that really revolves around one character, let's do it on our next category, heroes and villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
All right, let's start with Brady. Even though the book does not start with Brady, I want to start with him. I do like a supernatural Brady. And Ashley, what'd you call him? Brady Ex Machina?
I called him Electro Brady.
Electro Brady. Okay, I like that better.
I also like Brady Ex Machina.
Although that movie is way better than Brady deserves. But how do we feel about Brady's supernatural powers? Did we prefer him when he was just an evil genius? And do we think Brady has The Shining?
I mean, if The Shining is something you can medically induce, maybe?
Yeah,
he does. And I think that's what's unclear in this story for me. We touched on it earlier. I think it's season 2 of the show Mr. Mercedes, streaming on Peacock now, does a better job. And maybe that's something this story really needed, was a visual element. But to me, I understood what was happening better. And they start with this in the novel and then completely abandon it. But in the show, he's sort of inhabiting his basement and his like war station computers. And he's able to manipulate things in that way, see through his eyes, through others' eyes, control him via his control center. And that's what the big disconnect was for me. Like, how was he able to Professor X the tablet fish and randomly choose a user and get inside their heads? And I actually preferred the initial idea wherein Brady was able to inhabit only certain people. The nurse who had the seizures, Library Al, who was maybe intellectually impaired. Once he was able to inhabit anyone, it was like, how? Anyone? The president? Madonna? What are we doing? You could just
that's like
inhabit
why-
anyone?
Going on Taylor Swift's tour.
I feel like we get like 3 different explanations. Well, potential explanations, because I don't think he had one, which is experimental medication. Bonk in the head. Literally, that is something. Like maybe something shook loose when he got bonked. Or it was something about like maybe when he got bonked on the head, he could use 90% of his brain instead of 10%. Like that's one. I was like really looking to see if
Bonk
there
some
was
stuff loose.
just a place where it really landed. And then there's just like supernatural shrug, you know? And I don't need like a clear answer, but I do feel like King was sort of throwing shit at the wall and just saying, make your own decision on how. And it just felt a little bit cheap to me. And because I don't want to think about the why. I don't want to think about the how. That is stuff that unless you really, really find an elegant way to depict that stuff, it's always going to feel laborious. I mean, there are so many steps that it took for Brady to do what he's doing, or by the end of it, which, like Ashley said, I still don't even really get
I don't know.
Yeah, same.
Something about
that's
fish.
what's so great about Firestarter is the why and the how is the shop, and it's incredible. And then they can just do it. We
And
don't
then
have
you can
to
just do
worry
it.
about it.
I almost wonder if that's why he backed off that a little bit, because it does feel like there is sort of that like healthcare anxiety in general of like the medical professions and the medical system, and just that idea that, I mean, I have this quote when it just says like, there's no downside as long as he kept the results to himself until human trials were okayed. The man was a murderous degenerate who was never going to wake up anyways. Kind of that medical experimentation that Babineau was doing. Like, I think that's so interesting.
So interesting.
But I think you're right. It does feel a lot like the shop. So it's maybe like, you know, oh, I've already done that. I don't want to lean too hard into that because then people will be saying it's just like Firestarter. But then why have it in there at all? It could have just been a bonk.
It's like a vendetta against the shop. It's like in Cracker Barrel where somebody fired Brad's wife, and then every time they post anything, somebody will be like, you fired Brad's wife, that's why 11 years ago. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go follow Cracker Barrel.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you are not chronically online.
Are you talking about like Facebook drama?
No, I'm talking about Twitter drama.
Oh, okay.
Cracker Barrel Twitter drama.
Cracker Barrel Twitter. Follow. I'm telling you.
I will say one of the funniest Tumblrs I ever followed in my life was old people posting on Facebook restaurant pages. And that's all I'll say. You can find it by Googling it. It's one of the funniest things I've ever read.
This is great. It's like anytime they have a special, they're like, Brad's wife would have liked that special, but you fired her. It's hilarious.
God, that's so funny.
Yeah, I almost kind of feel like Brady doesn't deserve to have The Shining. You know, when I think
I was
about the
gonna say,
character.
don't only like good people have The Shining. I don't think that's true. Because in Doctor Sleep, don't they? The bad people have The Shining.
They eat The Shining.
They eat The Shining.
Yeah. Oh, they eat it.
Yeah.
It's food.
On The Shining.
Been a minute since I've read that one.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't have
such
The
a great
Shining.
book.
No.
He's just had some cocktails.
And I don't mind him being a supernatural, like the supernatural. I love a supernatural. Give me the
I do too,
supernatural.
yeah.
I love it. I love ghosts. I love telekinesis. I eat that shit up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the method of which it takes place that causes the problem.
Yeah, what I do really enjoy is this idea of like suddenly you look over at him and he's grinning at you, or like something knocked over. Like those are creepy
Terrifying.
moments, you know.
Yeah.
But then we mix the science in, and I don't love it so much. And it's like you got to pick one, you know.
I will say I used to work in a hospital when I was a teenager, and there are really creepy moments like that can happen when you're like in somebody's room and they're sleeping, and then you are like cleaning or doing whatever, and then you turn around and suddenly they're looking at you and they're not saying anything because they can't, usually. So it's like they're not trying to be creepy, but it's like it is very jarring. And
you're giving me the chills talking about it.
Yeah. Hospitals are very creepy places, man. I used to work like the late shift and 3:30 to midnight. And I have this one story. I won't tell the whole thing now, but I'll just say I had like one exit from this area I was in, and it was right. You had to walk by the morgue, and it was like 11:30 at night, and somebody left. Like I turned the corner, and I only had this one hallway that I could get to where I need to go. And there was just a stretcher with a dead body under a sheet.
Stop
like,
it.
that was left in front of the morgue, and it was blocking the whole hallway, and there was nobody around.
Oh shit!
Like, it was just by itself.
This is
and
Night Watch. You're just
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
I literally thought of
Autopsy of Jane Doe.
yeah, and then the nurse like came down like a few minutes later, was like, sorry, I forgot the key, you know, and it was late, so they didn't think anybody would be around, but it was
been dead for 10 years.
it was so freaky, like one of
You've
those things that
always
stuck with
been
me.
the nurse.
Yeah. Oh, well, speaking of bodies, I tried to put on Faces of Death the other night, and I made it about 3 minutes in, and I was like,
Why
no,
would you do that?
because it's on Shudder, and I'd never seen it, and I was like, okay.
The only reason I'm going to see the next one is because Charlie XCX is in it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I want to see that movie that the Cam filmmaker is making, The Faces of Death. Like, they're making a movie that's about the Faces of Death, and it's got Billy from Stranger Things and Barbie Ferreira from Euphoria. It looks really I'm excited. I'm really excited about it because it sounds really cool. But like, I don't know. I have such visceral memories of watching Faces of Death in college. Like, fucked me up.
Yeah, it fucked me up. That was 3 minutes. I was like, I can't do it. Well, speaking of death, anything else we want to talk about with Brady before we move on to Hodges, who is staring death in the face? All right, let's talk about Hodges. Do we still have beef with Hodges, or has he grown on us? Yeah, I still got some beef with Hodges.
But if I have to read about that ringtone one more goddamn time.
I just can't figure out how to do it.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I love Hodges in a lot of ways. I really do, because he does feel so obnoxiously real to me. Like I've told you, it's like, oh, this is my dad in a lot of ways. You know, so that I appreciate, but I mean, what a goob. What a real goober, this old man.
Yeah,
I wrote down some. I was gonna save this for like word processor, even though it's not good, but there was just some funny old man boomer writing. And I'll just read it up really, really quickly. Like, this is a section about Hodges. He'll look up how to change it on the internet. You can find anything on the internet, he has discovered. Some of it is helpful. Some of it is interesting. Some of it is funny. And some of it is fucking awful. And I'm like, just
welcome
old
to
man.
the internet.
I know, old man discovers internet. And then there was like a line where he can't sleep and he gets up to net surf.
Okay.
Yep.
And I just love it. I love it. It's like adorable. It's so
I know.
cute.
See, that's the thing. Like, I can't help but like him a little bit because it's like, oh, that is real.
It's more so that I like. I find like King to be adorable, like writing, because you know it's just him, and so like talking about like learning how to use the compooper and everything. And hold on, but then there's like one quote about the remote control, and it's literally like just the most old man shit ever. I'm gonna try to find it. But why don't you guys talk about Hodges?
Well, I think he wrote about a lot of old man shit in You Like It Darker, the new short story collection, and I really enjoyed it. You know, I think that's one of the strongest elements of that story is really confronting death and confronting aging, and I think that's something King does really well. I think Hodges just annoys the fuck out of me, and I can't. I agree with you, Rachel. The way he treats Holly in this one does kind of bug me, even though I like how much she loves him. I do feel like the Holly that she's going to be in the next 3 books is here trying to get out, and Hodges can't really see it or let it happen. And I don't think he intends to hold her back, but I think he has a hard time seeing who she's going to be. And it's not till she partners with Pete Huntley, who will allow her to be who she really wants to be, that character really comes to life.
Yeah. All right, I got it. The zapper, he thinks, looking at it. That's what everybody calls these things. Quite the invention when you stop to think of it. You can access hundreds of different channels by remote control. Never even have to get up, as if you're inside the television instead of your chair, or in both places at the same time. Sort of a miracle, really. I know that he's like drawing a comparison between Brady or whatever,
Zapper and the Zap-It.
But it really just sounds like old man talking about, man, what a nifty invention this is.
That's like Homer when he buys the teleporters at the thing and he puts one by the toilet, you know? Oh, well, how do we feel about his death? Did we see this death coming? Do we care?
No, I loved that he died.
Really?
Really? I thought it was handled Well,
I think it's handled fine. I just don't
Yeah.
care.
oh,
Yeah,
see, I liked it. Like,
I
yeah.
love that he dies. Like, I know that sounds no, but I don't mean it because like I hate
Because
that
you
motherfucker.
want him to die.
But kind of in a way, just in a sense that it felt right and it didn't feel forced. I know sometimes you have someone like almost die and survive and it feels forced, or a character dies off and you feel like it isn't justified. Everything about his death worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was unfair. He didn't deserve it. He got fit. Remember all of his diets and salads and finders
Salads.
keepers? Like, that is unfair. Like, that's how life is. You go through chemo and you beat cancer and then you die of COVID. Like, it's horrible. It's horrific here. It's awful here. But I'm glad King didn't let Brady kill him.
Yes,
I was
agree.
worried that Brady would end up they would end up killing each other. He didn't deserve to die by Brady's hand. So I think leaving finders keepers to Holly, like their business to Holly, is where the trilogy was heading. So the end of this book is very much so a high point for me. Yeah.
I think like some of the most horrific parts of the book are him talking about how much pain he's in because of
I do
his
too.
sickness, and
Cancer.
like him just talking about being in hospitals and staring down the end of his life has made me deeply unnerved and sad. And like I think in a way that King intended, but it's just not something I want to read.
Yeah. Well, and even when before he gets his diagnosis, just the fact that like he knows something, but you don't want to hear the words, even though you know something is horribly
Something's
wrong
wrong
here. I just don't want to address this because then I have to deal with it, and I just don't want to go there.
And I have other things going on. Like
Yep.
Well,
I
and
don't have time for
serial
this.
killer.
I don't have
with
time to die.
supernatural abilities. I don't have time for cancer.
there's an interesting parallel there too, because you could argue that is dying by suicide if you're choosing not to treat a disease. Now, I'm not saying that, but I think, like, I don't know, a long time ago I was on a podcast and I said, well, I would never advocate for suicide. And the co-host said, well, I would if there was like a terminal illness involved. And so I think that it is an interesting parallel. Now, I think we know that he does eventually get treatment, but were this to drag out, he's promised Holly he's going to go get treatment in 3 days, but I don't know if I believe him. You know, I think he might not want to. And I think that's something King is working through too. And I think, you know, earlier I was talking about how he's writing to try to figure out how he feels. And I feel like the concept of teenage suicide feels abstract to him, but the concept of choosing not to get treatment for a disease when you're really old is not abstract. And I feel like that exploration of when is it my time to die and how much power do I have over my own death, I do find powerful, and I do enjoy him deciding like how much time can I buy and is this pain worth it, because he knows that if he starts getting treatment, at least the pain is going to go away a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all really smart.
Yeah, and I think I really like his death through Holly's lens. Like, I think it does really show how much she depended on him and how much he really brought her to life. I think that the strongest element of this book for me, I think, is Holly and who Holly is going to become, even though I kind of feel like she is trying to bust out of this book. But every time I read a Holly book, I like her a little bit more. And I think her not wanting to give up on Hodges, but also kind of knowing what's going to happen, but not letting herself think it too. It's just interesting to see this disease through both of their lenses. And, you know, I say that as a person who's got an older father. And so I know this is something that's going to be in my life at some point. But let's talk about Holly. Again, I am our resident Holly defender. I love this girl. I don't know if I necessarily love her in this book. I don't think this is her high point, but King has said Holly doesn't really want to leave. And I don't think he wants to leave her. And we know he's got another one, another edition of the Holly Chronicles coming out, I think either this year or next year. It's probably too late for this year. So has Holly grown on us at all? And do we feel like she is deserving of her own spinoff series based on what we see here?
I wouldn't have thought so. I think coming back with something as strong and scary as The Outsider really helped with Holly's emergence as a leading lady. I remember reading The Outsider. It's funny because, like, I read this trilogy and I was like, bleh, and I dropped it. And then I remember reading The Outsider for the first time. I had no idea Holly was going to show up. And this was years after finishing Mr. Mercedes. And I was so excited. It was like an old friend coming, and I was like, oh my God, I know her. It was like I was looking around like, babe, I know her. She's here. And so I was so pumped about it. And it was like, why am I so excited? I didn't really like this trilogy. I loved her in The Outsider, though. So here's the thing. When I had read The Outsider, though, I had seen season 1 of Mr. Mercedes and fallen in love with Justine Loop. So Justine Loop, who now, you know, reads Holly, I believe. I haven't got to read Holly yet, by the way. I said I was going to read it after I finished the trilogy, the Hodges trilogy again, because I wanted to reread them. So now I get to read it.
Cannot wait
to hear what you think.
Yeah. I'm very excited. But that's Holly in my head. And I don't quite know how much of that Holly is actually in Holly that Stephen King writes. But we'll see. I'm going to read Holly now, and we'll see if Justine Loop hops out at me. Because on the page, I don't know if I love Holly.
I think exactly that, but about Cynthia Erivo, who is Holly in The Outsider, and who is also going to be Elphaba, my queen. So
Obsessed with
I'm
both of them.
obsessed with her. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think seeing Holly like embodied by these two really great actresses has really elevated her in my eyes, because I agree with you. I watched The Outsider before I revisited this trilogy, and it did really make me like her a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what it is we get to see her, and even in The Outsider and even on the page a little bit, we get to see her unshackled. We get to see her unshackled from her parents, unshackled from Hodges. She's just allowed to exist in a way that she's not allowed here. And while I do think, you know, the progression from Mr. Mercedes to End of Watch,
huge.
She does, like, we do see her evolve. We do see her coming into her own. We do see her feeling more empowered and owning, going to therapy, quitting smoking. You know, she's making these steps.
Oh, I loved her Nicorette gum in this book.
Yeah.
I know.
I love her buying the cigarettes and then throwing them away. Like, I love all of these things about her. But yeah, seeing her on screen without any of those people around her more, even in the Mr. Mercedes TV show, just the fact that we get to see her, I don't know, moving about the world in a different way that doesn't necessarily always come through on the page.
It is interesting that she's always cast younger.
Yeah.
And she's not cast as a 45-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Randall, bring us home. How are you feeling about Holly?
Randall, tell us how much you love Holly, please.
I remain a Holly hater.
Yeah.
Whoa.
We're balancing the ends of the Holly seesaw.
That's right. That's what I love about the pod.
Exactly.
All viewpoints welcome.
Well, somebody who I know we won't have any polarizing opinions on is Barbara. Okay, we have to talk about Blackish. That is the one thing that I did remember, and how frustrated I was at the end that the big reveal of this technology he had was like a balaclava and night vision goggles. I was like, that's not surprising. It's snowing.
Thomas Harris.
Yeah, exactly. I was
James
like,
Gumb.
I've read it. So this Blackish thing, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, because I have said repeatedly, I do really enjoy when King tries to push himself. He tries to empathize with characters who have different life experiences than him. And I think he has done that really well in the past. I don't know about this one. And I wonder if maybe having some additional IRs or other people reading it before publishing would have helped this a little bit. How do we feel about Barbara and Blackish?
I mean, you could have lost her whole storyline, and we wouldn't need to even talk about it. Yeah. Like, I don't understand why it was in there. Like, you know, it works, I guess, because Brady is going after all the kids that would have attended and potentially died at the concert, and that includes Barbara. But like I said earlier, by the time I got to the end of the book and they mentioned Barbara again, I was like, oh, that's right, that happened. You know what I mean? Like, there was no... that I think Jen, I think earlier you put it in a good way. It was just like a little snippet that kind of got like, that was in there. And then we never really revisited it. So I'm not sure if maybe it would have worked better if it was a theme that would have continued. Maybe a theme that Jerome could have put his 2 cents in. It didn't work for me. And like, here's the thing. I don't know. I can't identify. I can identify with imposter syndrome. I can identify with depression and suicidal ideation. I think King did a really good job with those elements, but I can only kind of speculate as to whether or not he nailed the Black experience. My guess is no.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point. We are 4 white people talking about this. So
Yeah,
if you
and that's
have
why-
other opinions, let us know, please.
That's why I'm hesitant to say anything about it. It's not as if I'm any kind of authority or like think I can write these characters better. It's just I'm just going to go back to that quote from the New York Times review, which basically said white gaze character of the year about Jerome. And that's kind of what I've been saying since Mr. Mercedes. But again, I just don't understand why he feels the need to like go this deep. I mean, the Barbara stuff to me feels like the on-ramp for the latter half of the book's discussion and exploration of teen insecurity, teen youth, the elements and the insecurities and the anxieties that lead to teen suicide. But I don't know why we needed to spend so much time talking about race and her anxieties about race. It's not to say they're not real and not stuff that kids actually struggle with, but she's also just like complaining about being like a well-to-do Black teenager. Like she's just like, oh, I'm rich and I have it hard too or something. It was just, I just remember it being like feeling really bizarre and a strange regression that felt like a third arm growing out of someone. I'm like, I don't know why this is here. I don't know why we need this. And I don't need, and this is something I've talked about with people. It's like, I don't mind King writing this sort of stuff, but I don't need him to write this kind of stuff. Like sometimes it's best to leave these kinds of characters and these kinds of struggles to writers who actually have that kind of experience. And I don't know. And again, I say all this knowing that it's like, it's the gif of Macaulay Culkin and My Girl swatting away all the hornets. It's like, why am I wandering into this? But all I will say is that it just doesn't feel authentic, and it feels well intentioned. But
well, first of all, Macaulay Culkin wandered into the bees to get her ring that she lost when they ran away from the bees. Okay, so.
Well, I have no ring to fetch, so I'm going to back away from the bees.
I think that is. Because I was thinking about this a lot, because you sent us this question, and I was like, oh gosh, yeah, what are my thoughts here? How do I gather my thoughts for this one? And with Brady, I mean, clearly, we know. He's very racist.
Yes.
Not a good guy. And so I think that is maybe an interesting element of what he's doing to Barbara, is he's having this conversation in her head, fueled by his own racism and projecting these thoughts based on his own racism. And that is kind of interesting, but I don't think he really goes there with that. Like, it's not like he ever is having Brady say anything about that. And maybe that would have helped this feel less, like you said, like shoehorned stakes. Like, the only reason this is in there is because, we got to raise the stakes with somebody we know and somebody we care about. Who's around? Oh, there's Barbara. Let's use her. Let's throw her in front of traffic.
Yeah.
So
literally.
I think it feels like he was trying to handle it as sensitively as possible and was aware of what he was doing. And that's all great. It's just, I don't know if you had to.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, she's a teenager. So many of these things could have had literally nothing to do with race and still would have carried the same weight. She could have just felt like an outsider in her school. She could have just felt insecure, didn't have the right clothes, whatever, wasn't rich enough. Like, all of that stuff is valid still. So there's so many other conversations that could have been had. It didn't necessarily have to be this one.
Yeah, and I think, I have Jerome on this list, but I don't think there's a whole lot to say about him because he doesn't really feel like a real, exactly. He's super hot too and very tall.
He looks like Obama, but taller.
But taller, yeah.
They refer to him as the Shaft in this, or Freddie later does. Yeah, she has to sit on his lap, and she's like, I get to sit on the Shaft's lap, and I'm like, what?
I mean, that's just a hair's breadth away from saying I'm sitting on the Shaft.
Yeah,
which is a whole other thing. And I wonder if this feels like amusing to me. This feels like King thinking about where Jerome started and where Barbara started, and just the fact that he named this character Barbara also, and thinking about who these characters are. How do I write characters of color? And by now he has gotten criticism from Mr. Mercedes and a little bit in Finders Keepers about this, Tyrone Feelgood character. And this feels like him a little bit trying to say to critics, hey, no, I see it. I know. I can think through this too. Like, I'm aware, but also kind of thinking about his own white guilt and trying to piece all of this together. And like a lot of the stuff that we've been saying in this book, I just don't think he ever really lands anywhere. And so he just does kind of walk into the bees and then just kind of tiptoes back out, and we don't get anything. It's like we don't get, like, as much as I hate that Macaulay Culkin dies, like, that movie is incredible and I cry every time. And like it feels like we tiptoe into the bees, but nobody gets stung and nobody dies. And so what are we
But Barbara
doing?
gets a boyfriend.
But Barbara gets a boyfriend, and I do like that because I like Barbara. She's a poet.
Everyone likes Barbara.
That's true because she's
Ashley,
perfect.
Ashley hasn't. Yeah.
I know.
A lot of Barbara.
Just wait till you
You're
get to Barbara's poetry.
So much Barbara.
I will also say I want to direct everyone to a chat I got to have with Scott Woods, who talks about blackness in King's work, because he did have some thoughts on this also. Also, he's just really cool and had a lot of great thoughts on this theme in general.
Great episode.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else we want to talk about? Should we mention Nurse Scapelli really quickly? I really liked having this really nasty character, even though she's...
Was she the one that twisted his nipples?
Yeah. She was a little psychosexual nurse.
Yeah, she was nasty. I liked her. I would have liked to spend more time with her. But, it's like, the supporting cast just not a lot of standouts here. Like, it's so funny because Library Al is actually an incredibly sympathetic and interesting character in this series. Like, so I guess revisiting this book, I was prepared for his role to be larger, but it's pretty small. And that's just the problem with Babineau and Library Al, is that we spend so little time with them as their own selves. It's we're always with them through the lens of Brady, so they don't actually become characters in themselves, which is, to me, is unfortunate. It reminds me of one of my big complaints about Castle Rock season 2, which is that they give us Ace Merrill and then kill him at the end of the first episode, and then have him possessed by some other creature that's not Ace Merrill. So I'm like, don't give me Ace Merrill and then take away his personality. It's like, what the fuck?
Don't make him Paul Sparks, who's hot too.
He is hot.
Yeah.
He's a great actor. It's not his fault. It's just like it's just a bizarre choice,
Well, and because we don't know anything about these characters and who they are and what their wants and needs and desires are, things that happen in the book that maybe should have had an impact just don't. Like, there's a moment where Brady, Z-Boy, which is Library Al, possessed by Brady, kills Dr.
using the
Babineau's
name Myron Zeckham
wife.
His wife. Yeah.
Kills his wife. Like, shows up, shoots his wife in the stomach, and she dies. And, Babineau's upset about it, I think, like, kind of. And, like, at some point he's like, we've been married for 35 years. Okay, well, there wasn't, like... I didn't know that. Like, no one told me. So there's just no stakes then once the character gets blasted away.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't know who actually killed her. Like, I was getting really lost in all of these characters.
Yes, I had to go back and figure out who it was.
I was just laughing when I just said the Myron Zeckham thing, and that does remind me of, that was another layer that we did not need. It's like, there's just so many aspects to this plan that it's just so completely mind-boggling to consider it all.
Well, and Brady's starting to leave Z's everywhere.
Yeah, why even leave the Z's?
Why leave the Z's?
Branding.
Yeah. It's branding.
It's
But
like
like,
the
is he
Wet Bandits,
losing the
speaking
Mr.
of Macaulay
Mercedes?
Culkin.
Don't you think that he would want, like, does he want people to know that it's Brady doing these?
I guess.
Murders.
But why then? But why use Z and why not spell Brady everywhere?
Or Mercedes.
Say Mr. Mercedes lives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It feels like just a Z is kind of a repeated theme throughout, but it doesn't really mean anything.
Oh, it's the end. Get it?
Oh,
Zed.
Oh.
The end.
Okay, I get it.
It just doesn't land.
It doesn't land, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe
Yeah.
that is what the point of all the Z's. But
I think that is,
yeah.
but it's just, okay, we get it. End of watch, Z, the end of the alphabet. What did they say at one point? Like, well, maybe it's, Omega or whatever. It's like, okay, all right.
Sure.
We're getting too literal.
What
here.
does it mean to
Wash
Brady,
down.
though? Because Brady doesn't
That's
know
the
this is
thing.
the end.
Right?
To Brady, this is the
See?
beginning of a new reign of terror.
Mm-hmm.
Does he want fame for it? Does he want people to know it's him? He's leaving clues for people to find him. Yeah,
it's a good point. Because no, he doesn't want people to know it's him, right? Because then
then they could
Well,
potentially
then he'd get
stop
caught.
him.
Then Hodges would get him. He would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for this. The Hodges
These
homies.
Z's, these darn
Hodges homies.
meddling Z's.
Man, they should have called Finders Keepers Hodges homies.
They should have.
You know what would have been
the Hodges Homies
more
Chronicles.
interesting is
we could rebrand it as the Hodges Homies trilogy.
We could. What would have maybe been more interesting is if the Library Al, Dr. Babineau, what if they were leaving the Z's as like their one piece of their good conscience, leaving a clue to...
It's like when Reagan writes "Help me" on her stomach.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because leaving the clues for them as Brady, it just does not make sense. There's just too much.
it's like a
that doesn't
calling
add up.
card.
Yeah,
but do you
For who?
actually want somebody to figure it out? No,
Yeah.
not really. Like,
and then
Well,
he
and that's
gets
the other
back
thing.
on the fucking umbrella.
Yeah, I could
blue
have
Oh,
done the
yeah.
umbrella. I forgot about that.
as Z-Boy
Yeah.
now.
And I think there's something really horrific about the idea of somebody possessing your mind. And I think it's done
Terrifying.
really, really well in the drawing of the three, when he jumps into Mort. And I just love the word Mortsopedia also. But here it's like we just don't ever get enough of the horror of that to really feel it. It's like you were saying, Ashley, when his wife dies, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's just a new thing
Well,
that's
I didn't
happened.
know her, so
Maybe she was a real battle axe,
Maybe she was, yeah.
waving the rolling pin around.
Well, let's talk about another battle axe. I forgot to put her on the list, but I want to talk about Freddie a little bit. I did really like seeing her pop up because I really enjoy this character. And I know I haven't seen much of the TV show, but I like the actress who plays her. And I like that she just gets super high and she's like, can I get room service from this definitely real witness protection program?
Yeah, she's a fun little like comic relief character, and
yeah.
I'm glad she doesn't die.
Same too.
Yeah, it's it was like texture in an area of the narrative where it really needed some. So.
Yeah.
it's also mighty convenient, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
she's a hacker. It's like, how are we going to execute this plan?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, Freddie.
I'll say this
hacker.
too.
Great.
I mean, I can suspend my disbelief, but like if you're working at like a computer repair store or whatever, you're probably not that good of a hacker. But I guess the economy is pretty rough. But it's
Yeah.
like these seem like very advanced skills.
Yeah, she feels like the Jurassic Park hacker,
Yeah.
Like, although I enjoy, she has the thing where she's got something in her pocket and she gets shot through it and she doesn't die. But I like that King carries that through. She doesn't just bounce back up like her boob is really hurt. And, I don't want her to be hurt, but I do like the realism there. And yeah, she feels like a character that has some life in her. And I wonder if it's because she's a character that originated in another book and the ones that really only appear in this book just kind of feel flat.
Yeah.
And,
Well, she's the first one to catch on, right, to Brady, because she actually knew Brady as a person, whereas nobody else really did, because she did, because she was working with him day in and day out. So she was kind of friends with him. So she's the one to break the code really quick and be like, wait a minute, that's something Brady used to say. Like, wait a minute, that's how Brady would have written that code. Wait a second.
Yeah.
she's putting the pieces together. Doesn't understand it at all, but yeah, she's a better detective than Hodges.
She is. Yeah, and I like that her motive is just, I'm poor and I want some money. Like, that's all it needed to be, and he
That's a
lets
strong
it
motive.
just be that. Exactly. Like, he just pays her to show up at the hospital, and I like how simple that is. I don't think it needs to. And then she's afraid, and, that's all it needs to be. When she gets shot in the boob, it hurts a lot, and she's in some misery. So let's talk about misery in our next category.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
All right, so I have this thing on the list because I think we kind of have to talk about it a little bit. We're not going to get too political, and I know we tend to avoid talking about a particular person, but King mentions it in the book, and on the CBS morning show, he's talking about Brady living like he's Donald Trump. Now, earlier I said remember that date because this is in June 2016, and King had been tweeting about Donald Trump.
No way.
In the lead up, but I wonder, I think this is the beginning of it, like of King being really super political on Twitter. Now, not King first learning how to use Twitter, although it would make sense that he did learn how to use it in this book because it's so much about like technology. But I wonder if this is, and just the year 2016 and all the shit that went down in reality, I think this marks the beginning of King becoming the Twitter person that we are going to continue to see. So that's my misery. I know it's I don't know. King's a great follow on Twitter, but there's a lot of stuff that I just tune out. And there's a reason we don't talk about those tweets on Needful Tweets anymore. Anybody else got some misery?
Oh, of course.
I actually didn't have too much for this one. Just I think like my misery was more big picture, but I did write this line down because it's just ridiculous. But he'd only gotten in because McDonald had some form of epilepsy. This is Brady. Not much, just enough to briefly open a door. Others seemed to have natural defenses. He hadn't even managed to stay inside the orderly for more than a few seconds. And if that ass munch had been a dwarf, he would have been named Dopey. Like Brady just he's like this little incel fucker, but sometimes he just makes jokes like he's like a 60-year-old man.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like dialogue from a 60-year-old man, I have on page 185, Barbara says he was wearing a terrific suit that must have cost mucho megabucks.
Okay. Yeah.
Says no child in the history of the world except for maybe the bike kids in It. In the 50s.
There's a really incredible moment at the very end of the book, the very last chapter. Well, yeah, the very last chapter where Holly and Jerome are sitting at Hodges' grave and essentially talking about how much he meant to them and how he changed their lives and brought them all together. It's literally like summing up why this is important to all of us, the characters, the world, the readers. And Holly comes in with this is just so fracking poopy.
Oh, I know. I hate that shit.
Every time.
And ruins it. Like, in my opinion, that would have been the moment for Holly to be crying and say, it's just so fucking shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would have hit so much harder. And I think that's the thing that I have started to tune out when I read Holly stuff. And that's once I can tune it out, I start to really like this character a lot more because I think she is a great character and she can be well written. But like you said, she'll just pop up with poopy doopy out of the blue and it just completely takes you out.
Yeah. It's like, who would have this person around?
Exactly. I had to say that for Dan Caffrey too because I know he hates the poopy doopy.
I did have some, and this is funny because I don't know if I've ever had this happen where it's like misery / word processor of the gods.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like I hate it, but also kind of love it. Just because it's, I don't know, feels very silly. So one of them is at the end. Brady is getting the scar thing, and it says a perfectly legal item when used the right way, which it never was by Babineau and his cohorts. They may have been good doctors, but out here in the woods, they were often bad boys. It's like so like kind of silly detective novel talk, but every once in a while I'm just like, that is so dumb and also amazing, and I love it.
It's like right on the nose, and sometimes it's great, you know. Yeah. Also, that was what they're talking about is the night vision goggles, and I'm like, this is not revolutionary technology.
Yeah.
There's little things in the book that obviously were unbelievable to me. For example, at the very end again, when Holly and Hodges throw the Zappet into the fire and Brady's like, it's the only one I brought. And it's like, the only one you brought. You have a plan you've essentially been working on for years. You've managed to possess people's bodies. You've done all this unbelievable stuff, and you bring one Zappet. Mm-hmm. I can't with you, Brady.
That's Bush League.
I got really mad when Hodges kissed Holly on the lips also. I was like,
when did Hodges kiss Holly on the lips? I don't feel like I even remember this.
Maybe you blocked it out in the car, like right before they're about to go into Heads and Spins.
Right.
Like that was rough, and then when he slipped her the tongue, I was like,
I know it was. I was like,
well, I guess she is like 50. I guess
that's true. So we don't need to have the age gap discourse either, you know.
I'm picturing my sweet little Justine Loop getting kissed on the mouth.
I know that's
Brendan
what I was thinking
and
first.
I'm like,
oh, Elphaba would never. Although I might make out with Brendan Gleeson. I do like him. More so as who is super hot. Speaking of Ex Machina, actually, Domhnall Gleeson is in that. Mm-hmm. And it's really great. So let's talk about the great stuff in this book. In our next category, word processor of the gods.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
All right. I don't have a whole lot in this section, but I did notice that on page 234, Holly says she likes Michael Bolton, and I also like Michael Bolton. So I thought that
she
was
also
nice.
mentions Billy Joel, right?
Yes, she does. It was the Michael Bolton that really stuck out to me.
I kind of wish I guess something that I enjoyed was the brief glimpses we got where Brady kind of described what it was like to be inside these other people's heads, like not in sort of an abstract way, but in more of like the idea of his presence is destroying their minds. There was one section I found really compelling where he said, with that in mind, Brady turns inward and finds what remains of Felix Babineau's core consciousness, the brain within the brain. It has been scarred and ravaged and diminished by Brady's repeated occupancies, but it is still there, still Babineau, still capable, theoretically at least, of taking back control. It is, however, defenseless, like some armored creature stripped of its shell. It's not exactly flesh. Babineau's core self is more like densely packed wires made of light. Not without regret, Brady seizes them with his phantom hand and tears them apart. I thought that was really, really evocative and compelling. And I wanted more language like that and more, in lieu of a mind palace, I thought that was kind of a cool way to activate that sort of abstract notion. Unfortunately, I feel like on the opposite end, you had that one section where the teenager was on the Zappet, and then it was like he was on the bed next to her, like she could see him, and that was really confusing to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas this was a lot more evocative and compelling, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I wanted more too. You know? Yeah.
I loved Brady's death.
Yeah, that was fun.
I did too.
Very poetic.
Yeah, not necessarily, Jerome writing in like a hero part, but him getting wrecked by a car was delicious.
Jerome Ex Machina.
Yeah. Especially he's begging to die because it hurts so bad, and Hodges literally is like, doesn't that hurt? And he's like, yeah.
You did, yeah.
And I
liked that a lot too, yeah.
Yeah.
It is funny though that that Jerome like kills him. Like he's very young. He's like 19 years old. That's true. It's like and then he seems pretty unfazed by the fact that he's murdered someone, even if it is Brady. It's just one of those things that you encounter in fiction sometimes. But and I don't need to see Jerome feeling guilt about it or anything. No. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah.
It is funny. It's almost like he's gonna jump out of the car and be like, all right, got him.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And just like kick some snow on him.
It was,
and I do like that death too, because it reminds me of Harold Lauder. It's a very similar death, and and that's
Yeah, it was
I love that
pretty
character.
gnarly. I wrote it down. Before he can scream, the left tread of the snowcat rolls over his midsection and chews it open. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that it chews
And-
it open. It brings a life to a vehicle as well, which I always love. And then later, Brady's hijacked body has been laid open to the backbone. His guts are spread out around him like the wings of a red dragon.
Yeah, I love Thomas Harris.
Pools of streaming blood are sinking into the snow. Yeah. And also the whole sequence with the bullets flying and Dr. Z being outside shooting inside. Cinematically, I bet it would have been really cool to see. This is not how season 2 of Mr. Mercedes ends, so we do not get this action-packed sequence at the sex cabin. But I enjoyed it.
Well, snow horror is always my favorite thing too.
Love
so
snow horror.
I do like
Oh
that.
my God.
Blood on the Snow.
Yeah. I've got on page 204, I really like this observation about Brady. This is when Freddie is coming to his room for the first time. Brady could think of only one young woman that might be. He considered saying no, but his curiosity had come back along with his malice. Perhaps they were even the same thing. And I really like that idea that, like, it's this curiosity, but like sinister, malicious curiosity that is really what Brady is and what drives him.
Yeah.
Anything else we got?
The only other one I had is, and I believe this was right after Brady or whoever he was possessing killed Babineau's wife, and Babineau calls him a Frankenstein, and he says, "Don't confuse the monster with the creator."
Yeah, I had that one marked too. I had one on page 474. It's when Hodges is in finally getting treatment, and he says, "The thought that comes to him is too complicated, too fraught with a terrible mixture of anger and sorrow to be articulated. It's about how some people carelessly squander what others would sell their souls to have, a healthy, pain-free body. And why? Because they're too blind, too emotionally scarred, or too self-involved to see past the earth's dark curve to the next sunrise, which always comes if one continues to draw breath."
I like that.
Which is like, it could be like a little like simplifying things or like a little self-righteous, but I think also in this moment and this context, like I just really like that, and just him taking a moment to just really appreciate, like, what it would be like and just how grateful he would be if his body was working 100%.
Well, and I think that's like a through line for the entire trilogy too, because we begin with this pain, like this economic pain, and like how do we continue to go on? How do we live with the mental pain with Brady's like financial trouble, and then his little brother who is just constantly dealing with the after effects. So I think I really like that as what the trilogy ultimately ends up being about, is how do you continue going on when you're dealing with pain that you can't really do anything about. It's just inevitable because of bad luck or because of circumstances or just because that's life. And it's these characters, the ones who survive are the ones who find a way to come together in the midst of that pain, and the ones who don't are the ones who try to drive other people apart or find that they don't have anywhere else to go. Well, where else is there to go for us but to some pound cake? So let's go to our filthiest category.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven. He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
All right, so I was dying at thinking about Holly convincing Hodges to go see 50 Shades of Grey, because he is talking about, like, first of all, like the nurse is reading it and she's like, there's a movie, which anybody who's read those books knows that there was going to be a movie. I'm still mad that Charlie Hunnam did not star in it, but that's another conversation. But just like Hodges and Holly going to see 50 Shades of Grey because Holly is a film fan. I was like, that is hilarious.
It is.
I also got to call out, because I'm a big fan of the loofah scene in Pet Sematary. We get a nod. We got a stiffy in a bathtub on page 110.
The little boy stiffy.
A little honey boy. She called me her honey boy, he thought, and when she kissed me, her lips were always a little damp and I got a hard on. When I was little, she called that a stiffy. Sometimes when I was in the tub, she'd rub it with a warm, wet washcloth and ask me if it felt good. And
I shouldn't be laughing about this.
I know, because I want to remind everyone we're talking about his mother. So, you know, and if you don't know what we're talking about, listen to our Mr. Mercedes episode.
On a lighter note, we get like a 1-3 punch of pound cake right in the first couple pages. The guys in the paramedics describe McDonald's as the golden tits of America. And then one of them talks about after a few hearty belches and one trombone blast from his nether regions that had his social x-ray of a wife booking for the kitchen is just a very, very classic King. And then they call, let me see if I can, there it is. That's 900 calories on the hoof, bro. Add sausage to the Egg McMuff divers, and you're riding right around 1300. That's such an unnecessarily like crass and grotesque description that it makes me kind of love it. McMuff divers. So yeah. And then along
John Amos say, like, you got the golden arches, you got the golden arcs, you got the golden tits of America.
Very funny. And then later, I think it's when it's like Freddie talking and it's a joke about lesbians, I think, but there's the phrase rugus munchus used.
Yep, there is.
So,
which is Latin for rug muncher, in
yes.
case we have any laymen.
And then the last one I had was like during the climax when he's like freezing and it's in the blizzard. It's just classic King where it's like a really tense scene and all this stuff's going on, and then he just adds a bit where he's like he can actually feel his dick shriveling inside of himself, and it's just a very funny sort of like addition there. So that was my pound cake I have here.
I've got one, explores a different territory of the pound cake segment. 377 says, he came in here to take a shit. An ordinary excretory function he's been performing all his life. But when he started to strain, the left half of his midsection went nuclear.
Oof. See, that makes me so scared of getting older.
I know. Yeah. Well, speaking of the cemetery,
I had, besides the nipple twisting and the sex cabin, the doctor's sex cabin. That was interesting.
I love a sex cabin.
He gets punched in the balls.
He also gets punched in the balls by an officer whose daughter was supposed to attend the concert. I just like the term snatch for a vagina, but Brady was talking about how much he fucking hated his physical therapy. And how he hated the woman. He called her, this is harsh, but he called her a bull-dyke Nazi who ran the place. Holy crap. And then he said, one more step, Mr. Hartsfield, Haber would exhort. And when he managed one more step, the bitch would ask for one more and one more after that. When Brady was finally allowed to collapse into his wheelchair, trembling and soaked in sweat, he liked to imagine stuffing oil-soaked rags up Haber's snatch and setting them on fire. Gruesome, but I do love snatch. Snatch is one of my favorite words.
I think at a certain point I kind of tuned Brady's inner dialogue out because there's so much like slurs and stuff.
Lord,
you know?
it's real bad.
I did not catch that gasoline snatch time, which is the nipple twisting part is like it makes me kind of like internally cringe in, you know. And there's Armando Munoz wrote a really great novelization of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and the nurse, Mother Superior, she sharpens her fingers. Have you read it, Rachel?
No, but
she pinches people's nipples, so it just made me think of that. That's too, hilarious. That's such a fantastic novelization. It is absolutely disgusting. Well, from disgusting to horrific, let's go to the creaky gates of the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
I think the only thing I really have here is I think it is horrific to think about somebody being inside your mind and slowly tearing it apart and going through all of your memories, and you can't do anything about it. And it ends with you barely being aware that you have shot your wife. I think that's horrific. I just wish we got a little more of it, even though I don't like Babineau and Dr. Z too much. Like, I wish we got a little more of the experience from their point of view, because it is awful.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that's what you get in the series, actually, a lot more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
And
it's on Peacock now?
Yeah, it's on Peacock, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of my cemetery was about Hodges, like, his stomach, like what Rachel read when he's like pooping and then it goes nuclear. And, you know, it's like, it goes back to Dreamcatcher, right? When like that book's about toilet horror and like how you start knowing things are going wrong in the bathroom. And it's just something I live in terror and fear of. So
if you've ever had a baby, you know what it's like to have to go after that too. So it goes nuclear.
While he's rinsing the bowl, the pain on the left side of his abdomen returns, along with those tentacles curling around to his lower back. It seems to plunge up and down with every heartbeat. His stomach clenches. He thinks of running to the bathroom, but it's too late. He leans over the sink instead, vomiting with his eyes closed. He keeps them that way as he fumbles for the faucet and turns it on full to rinse away the mess. He doesn't want to see what just came out of him because he can taste a slime of blood in his mouth and throat. And that's just like,
He's so good at writing it. Like, I love the idea of the tentacles of pain wrapping around him.
Right, what you know, right? Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And for me, like, a lot of it, I didn't even mark them necessarily, but just a lot of the suicidal scenes, like we've already talked about, are actually like really deeply unsettling.
They are.
A lot of the time, and hard to read, and it's just very sad. I did have one where the guy, the ball puncher, he says, this is on 225, the next day when he left the house, Moretti found a dead dog stretched out on the welcome mat. Its throat had been cut. Written in dog blood on the windshield of his car was, "Your wife and kids are next." Just like, Jesus. So, like, not just the dog, not just threatening your wife and kids, just all of it is awful. Brady sucks.
Yeah, the way that he
every
kills
once
the
in a while
nurse,
you see these little pieces of darkness.
is pretty horrific. He like goes into her mind and finds a time where she was sexually abused.
Oh yeah, that was so fucked up.
And he uses
upsetting.
that to manipulate her to take her life.
Yeah.
And that's a good teaser for the end. Like, honestly, I think a lot about that. Like, he accomplished it with Sadie. I don't know why it needs to become about youth at the end, you know, like about all these kids. I guess maybe because they're more susceptible. But yeah, that was the most effective or impactful to me, was when he basically used the woman's like sexual abuse trauma against her.
Well, I think it's because you got to spend that time.
Yeah, she was a character we kind of understood.
Yeah, and like also in her head, and you saw him plucking these memories and twisting them and. Whereas with the kids, especially towards the end, where we just sort of got a montage of teen suicide, you know, we basically just got them telling us who they were, why they hated themselves.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to see that progression at all.
And it feels a little reductive at times, too. Like, it's not, you know... there's a much darker book in here, and it feels like it's filtered through the Hodges lens, or the Hodges homie lens, and I just wish this book had been as dark as I want it to be. Like, I want this to be a punch me in the face Stephen King novel, and not a kind of give me a hug. Okay, well, I've got a lot in our next category, and we actually do see Room 217 in this book, which I enjoy. So let's go to our next category, King's Dominion.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
All right, I got a whole list, and some of mine are very, very obscure. But I'm curious what y'all have. Who's got some?
I got a bunch too.
I don't really have that many. I have like one, and it's when Pete is discussing the suicides and the attempts that have taken place via the Zappits. This is in the hospital when they're having cake with Hodges for his birthday. He says that the suicides aren't in the papers and the TV stations are sitting on it, even Murder and Mayhem. This is a police nickname for WKMM, an indie station that has taken "If it bleeds, it leads" as an article of faith.
Yeah. Good catch. The next book. That's not the next. It was after Outsider.
Yeah,
after
that
Outsider.
was Holly's
yeah.
story. Yeah.
I've got one on 62. This is a real deep cut, you guys. So,
Uh-oh.
it says the last big storm was December 19th.
Jen, do you want to trade some?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we mentioned Inside View on page 43.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Here's a connection to that one. Inside View. A reporter from Inside View is in the night. Wait, what is it? Night. The vampire.
The Night Flyer.
Night Flyer.
Night Flyer.
Played by Miguel Ferrer in the movie, who played a character named Lloyd Henreid in The Stand.
Mm-hmm.
And on page 57, there's a character named Reverend Henreid.
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh, I love it. Nice.
Isn't there a Don't Fear the Reaper?
Yes.
Doesn't the website play that? Which
is what opens the Stand miniseries. And he also mentions that song in Blue Oyster Cult, specifically, I believe, in The Talisman as well. I think he was a big fan.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good song, you know.
It's such a good song.
And also, speaking of The Stand, on page 107, when they have just done surgery on Brady, they say no great loss.
Yeah.
And then we've got that whole no great loss montage. That's really
that hit me hard.
Yeah, me too. That's a rough one. And that feels like the suicide montage kind of thing. It just hits a little different. I've got the man who gives Hodges his hat at the end. This felt so much like The Shining when Halloran is trying to go up to the Overlook, you know, just happens to run into somebody who gives him the mittens and stuff. Then I also have Nurse Scapelli thinks her patients aren't trying hard enough to get better, which is like what we see in The Little Green God of Agony, which we just read in Bazaar of Bad Dreams.
Ooh, good one. I got one, page 60, along the lines of what Ashley caught, which was If It Bleeds, another Holly story. On page 60, why would you ask that? Alderson sounds astonished. Surely you don't think some outsider, which is an outsider is italicized, and then Hodges interrupts him. So that made me peek up a little bit.
We get a mention of Sharp Cereals on page 234, which is the cereal company that Vic worked for in Cujo. Okay.
I did not get that one.
Also, Babineau is talking about The First Kiss, a girl who was wearing peppermint lipstick. And in Gerald's Game, she wears peppermint yum yum lipstick when an awful thing happens with her father. So,
did we note that Ruth Scapelli's death is very similar to Stan Uris in it?
Oh no, but you're right. Yeah. The way she cuts it like down, and then there's the T,
and also writes in blood on the wall.
Yes.
So that made me think of it. I have one that only Jen will understand this because I can't imagine Ashley and Rachel. You've seen Golden Years, the miniseries.
Nope.
There's a character in it named Todd Hunter. Dr. Todd Hunter, and there is somebody with that same last name in this book. On
but it's like Todd Hunter, like
it's like
Mr. Todd Hunter.
That is the full last name. It is like John Todd Hunter. You know.
Yeah, so. I remember us having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
with that
it's an odd enough name that whenever it pops up, I peek up. So yeah.
Like of the Birmingham Todd Hunters.
Yes.
Okay, so on page 423, he mentions a family that was weird about religion, which made me think of Carrie. And the only reason I mention it is because on page 149, Babineau says, what you leave is psychic wreckage. And wreckage is the title of the last section in Carrie, which is also caused by psychic powers. So
yeah,
that's all I got. Anybody got any more?
Okay. Did you have any more, Rachel?
No.
I've only got two more. Terre Haute is mentioned.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is where the trash can man is from. And
jerking off to fire, you know?
Yeah. And then there's, I'm surprised nobody else caught this, 295. We get a mention of Freddie is wearing a blue chambray shirt.
Oh, God.
How did I miss the blue chambray work shirt? Oh, maybe because she was doing desk work. Which
the most consistent thing in any King novel. So, okay, that's all I have. That was a fun round. And there's some 19s too. I got like 3 or 4 19s, but you know.
Yeah. And you know, we did mention 217. I liked that that reference too. I was like, okay, there's something psychic, something weird going on in this room. I'm also one of those people that is going to bonk you over the head with the fact that it's 217 in the book and 237 in the movie. Okay. So I like that. All right. Well, let's go to our final thoughts, MVP and nose rankings.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's ready.
All right. Rachel, kick us off. Who's your MVP? What are you giving?
I don't know what I'm going to rate this.
What are your final thoughts?
Oh, man. My MVP of this book, I guess my MVP is Hodges. You know?
I mean, he's dying. We can give him
He's
something.
dying. He's going through some stuff. I think he comes to a good place of acceptance and realization and appreciation for all the people in his life. And I think it's really beautiful how they send this character off and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it's a good conclusion that feels well earned. And just thinking about his arc over, from where we met him to where he left. Like, I like that for this character. He's just a silly dad, but I love him for those reasons. And then overall thoughts. I really didn't like this the first time I read it, but I think it is one of those that maybe if somebody hasn't read it since they, initially read it, maybe it's worth revisiting, because I do think a lot of those themes come through a lot more. And I did find new things to think about this time around. But still, it is a little messy, I feel like. It's a little, like we've said, convoluted. It's a little all over the place. It's a little flip-flopping timelines. Not really necessarily 100% sure still to this day how certain things unfold or are possible. But I like some of the conversations that are being had here. So, what are out of Pennywise Clown Noses. Still, it's my least favorite of the franchise, so I'm still only giving it like 2.5.
All right.
Bright red Pennywise Clown Noses.
Ashley?
Well, I'm losing my voice, so I'll keep this short. MVP is Will Patton for getting me through another Mr. Mercedes jaunt. I highly recommend listening to the audiobooks if you maybe read this book and didn't love it, because he really does kind of bring a life to some of the more lifeless elements. I think I've said enough. My biggest problem with this book, it has nothing to do with sort of the story itself as much as the execution when it comes to the supernatural abilities. I cannot ever hear that stupid song again and listen to them talk about the little fishies on the screen and the flashing blue and guess the number. That's the thing too, is like they went into detail about, and if you click on one and you have to add up the numbers to get, and it's like, oh my God.
It's the Da Vinci Code.
the Da Vinci Code of shitty apps on a shitty defunct pad. I can't. I overall probably 2. Nah.
2?
2. Yeah, 2. I would say 2 dull red Pennywise clown noses. The shine is gone.
I also want to shout, I forgot that we do see a hot pink tablet like in You Are or I forgot that with our 237. And Randall, what about you?
I'm going to give it 2 bright red Pennywise clown noses. This book is kind of the epitome of a mixed bag for me.
Yeah.
It's got a couple really great horrific sequences, very memorable stuff, but this is a story that is undone by its plot. I feel like there is simply too much bending, twisting, sweating, heavy lifting that needs to be done to position Brady to be in the spot that he's in by the end. I feel like there is a more linear path to get there that we didn't get. And and for that reason, I found the book very aggravating, punctuated by moments of solid horror, good character moments, and I like it more than I did on the first read, certainly. But this is a book that I think actually does have some interesting ideas about lingering trauma, the residue of traumatic events in culture, and how they trickle down to vulnerable communities, which, is in line with the ways the book always wanted, or the way the first book really explored economic anxiety and kind of a precarious culture that's teetering on the verge of disaster. That stuff's really interesting, and I appreciate him for writing it, but I just don't think this book really congeals or comes together in the end. It's a lot of different ideas that clash in some ways and drive into walls. We spend too much time in certain corners, like with Barbara, when we could have spent more time with people like Babineau and Library Al, who are a lot more important to the narrative. But feel very distant. So I don't know. I get like frustrated when I think about this book, and I'm glad I'm done with it. I'm glad I'm done with this trilogy. Hodges was never my favorite character, nor really are Jerome or Holly. It's just not a world like this whole Bridgeton, Ohio kind of, I don't know if I think it's unnamed in the books, but it's Bridgeton in the series. And I'm not sure it's a world I like being in, at least in King's hands. I'm like, please take me back to Maine, sir.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 bright red Pennywise clown noses, and my MVP is the Zappet because it's driven us all insane.
That's very true. Yeah, I think my MVP is Holly. I love her. I don't love her so much in this book, but I love the Holly that she is going to become. And I like that King stuck with her. I like seeing her kind of shape over the years. Rachel and I did a character corner with Dan also, where we went real deep in the Holly lore. And so she's my MVP here. And I did not like this the first time I read it. I still don't love it, and I wouldn't have reread it on my own. I think after I read it the first time, I would have been happily done with it. But because I do really like Holly and wanted to read her story, I did enjoy reading it. And I think this works better. The entire Holly series, I think, works better if you read it back to back too, and you're not waiting for the next chapter, because the stakes feel very low. Like the highs don't ever really get to the highs of what I really love King for. That said, I think there are a lot of really interesting ideas in this book that I like to dig into. And I think it's well written. Like, King knows how to write, even if I don't really love the story. And even some of the more hackneyed stuff or the more on the nose stuff is still enjoyable, Rachel, kind of like what you were saying. Like, it's nice to just read some old man shit sometimes. So I'm going to give it 2.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, because Randall, I agree. Ultimately, it just doesn't come together. I think there's too many big ideas that conflict with each other, and I leave kind of not really taking anything with me, unlike Finders Keepers and Mr. Mercedes, where I do have these other themes that I find really interesting and that I remember. But here it's just kind of like, okay, we're ending it and Hodges is gone. And now what's next for Holly? So it feels like a weird anticlimactic end to the Hodges trilogy, because it's almost like the midpoint of where Holly is right now. And that's the story that I really care about more.
Mm-hmm.
So 2.25.
But I have really 2.25. Is that where we're? Yeah, that's right. That's some fast math. Did you pull out your Zappet?
I pulled out my Zappet. I followed the fish, and they led me to 2.25.
Well, now you're going to win some prizes. Oh, well, that's going to wrap up our coverage of the Hodges trilogy. We made it to the end of the road. I'm going to sing some Boys to Men in celebration. What a long, strange trip it's been. Ashley, before we go, where can we find you online and what's coming up on Keep It Weird?
Yeah, follow us at Keep It Weirdcast. Check out our YouTube, youtube.com/Keep It Weird podcast. We've got Halloween coming up. So we have a big X-Files episode with a return guest that all of our listeners really love, and an enormous listener ghost stories where we will be telling real life scary experiences and by the listeners. So if anyone listening to this, there's plenty of time. I don't think we're doing it till the last week of October is when it's releasing. So if you have a scary story, it doesn't have to be paranormal, just a scary thing that happened to you, you can email us at keepitweirdpodcast@gmail.com, and you might make it into the episode.
Those are always so much fun to listen to.
They're so much fun. They're so scary.
And Rachel, where can we find you and what's coming up on Halloweenies and the Girls on the Boys?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at the Vinyl Girl, GRRRL. And on Halloweenies, man, it's just really like everything's getting nice little bows tied on it. It's kind of nice. We're done with the Hodges trilogy over on Halloweenies. We are done with Alien finally all year. We've just got our rankings out, our rankings episode out. So definitely tune in and check that out. And then, because also, we let everybody know what we're doing next year at the end of that episode. So if you're curious what we're going to be doing, it's at the end of that episode. And then the Girls on the Boys, we just see more conclusions. We wrapped up season 4, all done with season 4 of The Boys. Oh boy. And we've got some great episodes featuring familiar voices and faces. We've got Ashley popped on for an episode. Mac Gerber popped on it for an episode. Justin Gerber is going to do a season 4 recap, and Mac is coming back as our resident Metropolis expert. So lots of Loser Club family in the mix over there as well.
Yeah, and we're heading to some fun places also that we will reveal in time. You can find me at Jen Ferratu, and you can find me co-hosting the Lady Killers podcast, and we are about to go into Halloween Town, so lots of fun ladies, some ginger snaps, some Rob Zombie territory, maybe a little 13 Ghosts. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you can also find me on, I have a new pod called Murder Made Fiction, which is about true crime adaptations. We mentioned Jim Jones in this episode, and in November, we are going to be talking about Jonestown and Waco. So check us out there. Just a little bit of light stuff. Well, and in October, we're going to be talking about Ed Gein. So Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Are you talking about the one where Powers Booth played Jim Jones?
Powers Booth. We are not. No, unfortunately. But I think... I was thinking about Tim Daly plays David Koresh, so maybe we could pair those.
Wait, are you going to cover the one where Taylor Kitsch plays David Koresh?
Oh, yes, we are. Yes.
Okay, good.
I haven't seen that. I need
It's
to.
very
I
good.
love
It's pretty
Taylor
good.
Kitsch.
I think it's good.
Well, y'all should watch it, and then listen to us talk about it, because we're going to have some thoughts. So, yeah, follow us there at Murder M Fiction. And Randall, where can we find you, and what do we have coming up on the main feed and in the Barrens?
You can find me at Randall Colburn on the socials, and Losers Club, Halloween's coming up. Our next book is Gwendy's Button Box, which is a little novella. It's very good. And then it's Halloween, so we're bringing Halloween Hell back. We're going to have 2 episodes, one in the middle of the month, one right at the beginning of November, right after we finish our watch. Check out that. It's going to be on the Patreon, patreon.com/thebarons. That's where me, Mel, Dan, and Justin each watch a horror movie a day in October and then talk about it. And we end up with more than 100 suggestions at the end of the whole thing. So if you want some horror suggestions, and also we unlocked our one from last year, which is 4 hours long. So check that out. And then we're finishing up the Mr. Mercedes TV series, and we're bringing Pop of King back. So we're going to talk about all of King's 2006 EW columns. So, there's a lot going on. Yeah. And check it out. Patreon.com/thebarons.
Never a dull moment. And meep, meep. Meep, meep, meep. So we are at the end of the road. Let's park the car in the garage. Let's leave the Hodges trilogy behind, and let's sign off. We'll be seeing you over long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
You've made it to the end of another bloody, disgusting podcast. Congratulations. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody, disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.